Hey everyone, happy Tuesday evening. Hi Darvader. So good to see you. I don't know if anyone else is here yet, but I have been having fun with this anyways. And I'm trying to decide what's the best way to go about doing this. I want to provide somewhat some knowledge regarding personality disorders, and then I also want to have a little fun. And the way I look at it is going over a bunch of, I don't know, facts about personality disorders. Because I have a downloaded version of the DSM-V. I thought we would go over some in particular. But if I was hoping to do this first just to see what kind of knowledge people have or think they have about personality disorders and doing a quiz first. But I don't know how many people will be joining me tonight, so I guess we will just wait and see. One of the first things I started to do when getting prepped for this was making a fun little game / quiz thing going on. And of course, all the work I had done kept getting frozen in Canva. And I don't know, like when I make a thumbnail, I normally don't have an issue. But I was making a lot more things going on and making like a game show template in a way, with slides and that I could use for question and answers, things like that. And I was working on it. I actually started it last night. And then when I ended my stream earlier today, I have been working on it pretty much ever since. And then it kept locking up, so I couldn't finish it. So then that's why I postponed my stream, was because I then went just to Google Docs or whatever and made like slides. Just to make it a fun little 10 question slide, question and answer. It's a scenario type, not it's a multiple choice that I figured we could do with the in streaming poll. I still cannot figure out how to do the polls where you just click the answers. I know StreamYard's had updates. I've seen other people have the polls where you have to type in the number and it registers. That's the one I have access to. I have no idea how to do the other ones. So I'm still going to need to research that or get someone to show me how to do that. I hope people will be joining me. I know people were, I had several people tell me they were excited. I hope that me postponing it to 8 o'clock or to 9 o'clock didn't make that big of a difference. But with my computer misbehaving, I had to redo some things. So definitely not going to go the way I had planned. So I guess we can start first and foremost with going over the main disorders from the DSM-5 that are listed under personality disorders. Oops. I had to get out of this marker because I was highlighting some stuff to go over. Bear with me a moment. Here we go. If any of you don't know what the DSM-5 is, it's basically, hey, Katie D, what's up? I'm refilling my water, but I'm here. And Reader's back. Thank you. Hey, guys. I don't know if you heard what I was already saying, but I made a little game / quiz to test people's knowledge, or at least what knowledge they think they have. I wanted to do that first before we went over some stuff, but with only a few people here, I don't want to do that yet. So I thought that we would at least go over what personality disorders are as listed in the DSM-5. And then if you don't know what the DSM-5 is, it's basically a diagnostic manual for psychologists, psychiatrists, guidelines that people have to meet to basically be diagnosed with certain disorders or mental illness. Especially with personality disorders, they're not something that can be treated per se, like depression or anxiety with a medication, things like that. Now, before I get into a lot of this, of course, most of you guys already know, but anyone watching on replay or anything, I am not a licensed psychologist or psychiatrist. I never wanted to be. I studied and focused on research, did my own research specifically on depression and multiple sclerosis patients. I did that in honor of my mom, who had MS, and she always had a positive outlook on life, for the most part. And I was just interested on those two things and how they correlate. But anyway, with that being said, I have studied psychology. I do have my degree in psychology, and I always am looking at new data, new research that's out regarding diagnoses, mental illness, reading things. I'm constantly learning about things in the psychology field. So most of this is going to be information straight out of the DSM, along with things that I have learned along the way in combination with opinions that I have. So with that being said, Darvader has her own copy, but says she promises not to cheat if there's a test. Okay, because I did. It's a quiz, not a test. And it's more for fun. It's not that kind of test. It's a scenario-based quiz. So I made it court themed, like this witness, this scenario, or this juror and this scenario. What personality disorder does this, display? This kind of, scenario display. So I will get to that in a little bit, because I wanted to do that. The more I thought about it, I wanted to do that first, just to see what you guys might already know. But there's not many people here. I don't know how many people I will get. So we'll got to start somewhere. We're going to start with the DSM. And as you can see here, this is specifically from the DSM-5, that is the personality disorder section of the DSM. I am going to make it bigger in case you want to read along. But this basic introduction, this is the basic introduction to this personality disorders. Can't I get rid of the side here? I don't know how to do that. Hopefully this is big enough in case you want to read it. Let's see if I can make it. There we go. In case you want to read along. So this is a personality disorder. DSM-5, it says, this chapter begins with a general definition of personality disorder that applies to each of the 10 specific personality disorders. A personality disorder is an enduring pattern of inner experience and behavior that deviates markedly from the expectations of the individual's culture, is pervasive and inflexible, has an onset in adolescence or early adulthood, is stable over time, and leads to distress or impairment. And I read that paragraph because when I talked earlier about wanting to do Psych Night and explain differences between someone actually being diagnosed with a narcissistic personality disorder versus just calling someone narcissistic, this is why. There is a set guideline as to someone, someone fitting an actual personality disorder. And that is, I'm going to highlight it again. I lost my highlighter, so I'm going to highlight that because it's important so that we see that. So personality disorder is an enduring pattern of inner experience and behavior that deviates markedly from the expectations of the individual's culture, is pervasive and inflexible, has an onset in adolescence or early adulthood, is stable over time, and leads to distress or impairment. So, just so you know, going over that explains what it is, psychologists are looking for when they make a diagnosis of a personality disorder. And one of the biggest things I want to point out in that right there is that it's pervasive and inflexible, and is stable over time. So it's not someone just being an asshole or being selfish at certain moments in their life, or having narcissistic traits. Having an actual disorder, personality disorder, is so far beyond just having traits of someone being selfish or arrogant, or it's even beyond narcissistic. Let's say people can have obsessive compulsive traits and not have an obsessive compulsive disorder. With any ongoing review process, especially one of this complexity, different viewpoints emerge and an effort was made to accommodate them. Thus, personality disorders are included in both sections 2 and 3. The material in section 2 represents an update of text associated with the same criteria found in the DSM-4, whereas section 3 includes the proposed research model for personality disorder diagnosis and conceptualization developed by the DSM-5 Personality and Personality Disorders Workgroup. Now, if you're familiar with the DSM-4 at all and the difference between the DSM-4 and the DSM-5, maybe I will cover that another day, but I'm not going to do that tonight. This is specifically for personality disorders. When you if you're looking at the overall the diagnostic manual, the DSM, from the very first volume to the DSM-5 that has separate what's the word? Like additions or whatever you want to say. There are many changes. They're constantly being changed, whether it's symptoms of certain mental illness or disorders, whether it's combined. Sometimes they combine disorders and mental illness into one. Changes happen all the time. As this field evolves, it is hoped that both versions will serve clinical practice and research initiatives, respectively. And then the following personality disorders are included in this chapter. And this is the one I was going to go over today, because there are other. Yeah, I'm not even going to get into it. There is another chapter in personality disorder that I'm not going to go over tonight. These are the majority, the main ones, the ones that most people have heard of. KDD says, this might be off topic, but have you ever taken the 16 personality tests online? I may have asked you this before, but I forgot. I'm sorry. You did ask, and I asked you which one, and you never were able to answer me, because yes, I do know you can get them online, and I have taken one before, but those things are, for lack of a better word, well, number one, they're not all the same, and they're man-made. So obviously they're all man-made. Any quiz, test, psychological testing is all man-made. But my point in that is that people make them up and then post them online. So they're not all the same. So it depends on which one you took, number one. And was it one from like a psychological site, or was it just one of those random ones that you find? Moni G, what's up? Because I've taken every test there is, basically. I've taken an MMPI. I've taken I've done everything except an actual Rorschach test. Ink blot. I've never, although I've learned about the ink blot test. We studied the first cards that were ever used. What, psychologists were looking for, or what kind of answers they what in their answers they were looking for when making a diagnosis. But every other like psychological test that I took in school, just because we took them to understand them, I then made my own questionnaires for my own research as well. Darvader says, Moni G, you're late. Pay the toll. Katie, I wonder, you have to send me the link of the one you took, because I'm interested just in taking the same one. That's why I asked, by the way. When I did take it, I cannot remember for the life of me what I was. I know that I'm an outro or extrovert. So I know there's an E in it. And that's really all I remember. Like what I understand, like 16 personality. Oh, you're giving me the website. Sweet. Okay, 16 personalities dot 16 personalities dot com. Well, look at that. I am going to take that test, KDD, because that's not the one I did. Can't remember the website I used when I did it, but I did it years ago. But I will take it tonight, and I'll go over it tomorrow when we before we start trial watch of Jen McCabe tomorrow. Or I can save it for next psych night. If we get enough people in here that want to do it, maybe everyone can do it for next psych night, and we can all report what we are. How's that? It definitely is interesting. I agree. It gives you basically the four there's four main categories that you can be put in with the personality testing, and it's more going to tell you if you're an introvert, an extrovert, those kind of things. So, but I love all things like that. So I agree with you completely. Maybe we'll do that, KDD. If people are interested, I can post it in my Discord. And see how many people are willing to take it and report their results. When we do the next psych night, we can go over them, everyone that participates. Would that be fun? Do you think anyone would be interested in that? I think that would be fun. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to post it in Discord, see how many people we can get to take it, and then go over it next Wednesday. Moni G took the Myers-Briggs in college. I'm an INFJ, introverted, intuitive, feeling, and judging. Yeah, that's the one. The 4-letter one. That's the one I'm thinking. Like, I know I'm an E, an extrovert, but I can't. Other than that, I cannot remember. So KDD says she's a logistician. Is that how you say that word? Why can't I say that word all of a sudden? I think Dodo is as well. I'm actually getting more and more excited the more I think about this. I think if I can get enough people in advance to take this, I'm going to post this website in my Discord, and I'm going to ask anyone who's interested to take it and then report back here for next Wednesday's psych night. And that's what we're going to do. How's that sound? Would you guys do that? I know Moni G is not in Discord, so Moni, I can text it to you. But KDD is in my Discord. Darvader, can I email it to you? Or can you look it up? Oh, duh, she put in the... Wow. I'm losing it. I'm tired. But 16personalities.com. Let's all take the same exact one, so we're not taking a different ones all over the place too, because there are different ones. And I think that would be fun for all of us to go over it next week. So let's do that. All right. Moni G says, in the 4-color one time, I got all blue. My principal at the time flipped. 4-color one. What's a 4-color one? I don't even know what that is. Okay, now you're confusing me even more, Moni G. 1-1 what? Like, what the fuck? I feel like I'm losing it. Like, what? That's okay, KDD. She got distracted. Her texts are blowing up at 9:25 p.m. See, this is why I use my focus on my phone. I love it. It stops any incoming texts or calls. Like, I don't want to hear it. I'm not expecting a call from anyone or that then. And everybody knows that I'm not great about checking my texts all the time. So I just tell everybody, when I see your text, I will text you back as soon as I see it. Forgot the name, but there were 4 colors: blue, gold, green, and red. It's called a booty call, KDD. She's married, Darth Vader. Anyways, I don't mind going off topic. As you guys know, I love it. I love chatting about whatever comes up. So, but I'm going to do that. So spread the word. I'm going to post that 16 personalities website in the Discord. and see how many of us we can get to take it. But that being said, I want to go over the few, at least the brief definitions of these disorders that are in this chapter of the DSM-5. So, first one we start with is paranoid personality disorder, which is a pattern of distrust, suspiciousness, such that others' motives are interpreted as malevolent. Schizoid personality disorder is a pattern of detachment from social relationships and a restricted range of emotional expression. Schizotypal personality disorder is a pattern of acute discomfort in close relationships, cognitive or perceptual distortions, and eccentricities of behavior. Antisocial personality disorder is a pattern of disregard for and violation of the rights of others. I think we all in true crime know we've seen antisocial personality disorders a lot. Borderline, now this is the one, when I go in depth about borderline, whenever that is, this is one of the biggest ones that I attribute to 5150. And it is a pattern of instability in interpersonal relationships, self-image, affects, and marked impulsivity. And there are a lot of other things that go under borderline personality disorder, and why I attribute it to 5150. And that'll be another night when we go into borderline in depth. But think about that, just the basics of that. And then the next one is histrionic personality disorder, which is another one that I attributed to 5150. And that's why I'm saying, when you have so much of these that are almost interwoven, I guess is a way you could put it, into one person, it's almost shocking. Because she also has a bit of antisocial, being that she doesn't seem to care or have regard for other people in what she's done. Now, histrionic is a pattern of excessive emotionality and attention seeking. Okay. I bet that you guys can guess who else I put in the histrionic personality disorder, right? So let me read that again. Histrionic is a pattern of excessive emotionality and attention seeking. Does crusty panties and twisted panties fit that? Oh, yeah. You guys are cracking me up already. So the next one is narcissistic, and this is the one we're going to be going over the most tonight. But narcissistic personality disorder is a pattern of grandiosity, need for admiration, and lack of empathy. So think about that when you call someone narcissistic, and or say they have narcissistic tendencies or characteristics, versus them actually having a narcissistic personality disorder. And again, that one says, is a pattern of grandiosity, need for admiration, and a lack of empathy. Then you have avoidant personality disorder, which is a pattern of social inhibition, feelings of inadequacy, and hypersensitivity to negative evaluation. So getting criticized, like not just getting upset. I mean, when they say hypersensitivity, they mean hypersensitivity. Okay. The next one is obsessive compulsive personality disorder, which is a pattern of preoccupation with orderliness, perfectionism, and control. And again, that's another one where you can tell, like, you can say someone has obsessive compulsive tendencies or obsessive compulsive characteristics. And a lot of people are like, oh, I have OCD about that. Well, when you're obsessive compulsive about maybe one or two areas in your life, that does not mean you have an obsessive compulsive personality disorder. It just means that you have some obsessive or OCD tendencies. And then these last two are kind of I'll just read them. So the second to last is personality change due to another medical condition. It's basically what it sounds like, is a persistent personality disturbance that is judged to be due to the direct physiological effects of a medical condition. For example, a frontal lobe lesion. So for example, another one, if you've ever watched Criminal Minds, or I even think a Law and Order episode, all these law ones always have one episode where they have a tumor in their frontal lobe, and then they out of nowhere, the sweetest person becomes like a serial killer. That is where those fit in, so that some sort of physical condition, something physiological, causes a personality disorder. And then the last one's just any other specified personality disorder. And unspecified personality disorder is a category provided for two situations. The individual's personality pattern meets the general criteria for a personality disorder, and traits of several different personality disorders are present, but the criteria for any specific personality disorder are not met. And then number two, the individual's personality pattern meets the general criteria for a personality disorder, but the individual is considered to have a personality disorder that is not included in the DSM-5 classification. So, like passive aggressive personality disorder used to be in the DSM, it's no longer in the DSM, so that would be in this category. Oh, I'm so bummed. Where is everybody tonight? Did someone else go live? Because everybody, I have several people who are like, they're so excited and they wanted this. This one was really interesting, and I'm kind of bummed. So I wonder who else went live or something, if that's what happened. Oh, it is. So that's what happened. Someone else went live. I got it. Anyways, well, I thank you guys for being here with me. I was going to go into depth about about one in particular, and I wanted to do that fun test that I spent all this time on, but it's no fun with not too many people. So maybe we'll just make this a lesson for tonight, and then we will do a fun test the next time. For anyone who was here tonight will know the answers. So how's that? Or watches this on replay. But I will talk a little bit more about. Aw, you guys are sweet. Katie D says, couldn't tell you who's live. Yours popped up first on my thing. So I appreciate that. I'm not going to say it because It doesn't really matter. I mean, I have you guys. I only have a few people here, but yeah, it is what it is. What are you gonna do? True Colors, Moni G. Okay, so it's the True Colors personality test. I'm gonna have to look that one up, Moni G, because I haven't heard it. I haven't heard of it. I'm always interested in new stuff like that. Darwader says histrionic is basically the newer term for hysterical, and in problems, as in problems associated with the womb. Darn sexist peeps wrote those earlier editions. No, histrionic's been, I mean, I honestly don't know prior to DSM-3. That's why when I first started studying psychology, I learned in the DSM-3. 4 and 5. Now 5 has been out a long time. There are other volumes and editions and all that stuff, but the DSM-5 is what most people still, as far as I know, reference. When you're talking overall. Now, I'm assuming it would be different if you went for a doctorate nowadays. They would probably use the updated editions. Plus, the DSMs are very expensive. Very expensive. So, having this download already, thankfully, was good for me because there's no way I could afford a newer download anyway right now. But oh, you sent me one in my text? Cool. Let me see it. Huh. I'm definitely going to look up to take one of those. I'm always interested in those. So much fun. But anyway, I was going to go over this just so you have an understanding of how they cluster these, which is what they do. They call them clusters. So it says the personality disorders are grouped into 3 clusters based on descriptive similarities. Cluster A includes paranoid, schizoid, and schizotypal personality disorders. Individuals with these disorders often appear odd or eccentric. Cluster B includes antisocial, borderline, histrionic, and narcissistic personality disorders. Individuals with these disorders often appear dramatic, emotional, and or erratic. Cluster C includes avoidant, dependent, and obsessive-compulsive personality disorders. Individuals with these disorders often appear anxious or fearful. It should be noted that this clustering system, although useful in some research and educational situations, has serious limitations and has not been consistently validated. And that's why it's important to say that they're basically ordered this way just because of the type of personality. They're not, I mean, because there's a lot of similarities even between clusters, not just the disorders that are in each cluster. It says, moreover, individuals frequently present with co-occurring personality disorders from different clusters. Prevalence estimates for the different clusters suggest 5.7% for disorders in cluster A, 1.5% for disorders in cluster B, 6% for disorders in cluster C, and 9% for any personality disorder, indicating frequent co-occurrence of disorders from different clusters. And then we are going to go straight to narcissistic personality. Let's see if I can find it. That is, where'd it go? There we go. Cluster B. We got antisocial. Yeah, borderline. And histrionic. Here we go. So when you have a diagnosis code, if anyone, like when you go to the doctors, even the regular doctor, you'll see numbers like whatever, and then it'll be a point something like this. So it says diagnostic criteria, and then there's a number 301.81. That's where they always code it like medical coding for diagnostic purposes, especially for like insurance and shit like that. So narcissistic personality disorder, it is 301.81. And this is the actual criteria: a pervasive pattern of grandiosity in fantasy or behavior, need for admiration, and lack of empathy, beginning by early adulthood and present in a variety of contexts as indicated by 5 or more of the following. Number 1, has a grandiose sense of self-importance. Example, exaggerates achievements and talents, expects to be recognized as superior without commensurate comments. I don't know why I can't say that word. I'm having trouble reading tonight. What the hell is wrong with me? Anyway, achievements. Number 2, is preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love. Number 3, believes that he or she is special and unique and can only be understood by or should associate with other special or high status people or institutions. Requires excessive admiration. Number 5, has a sense of entitlement. For example, unreasonable expectations of especially favorable treatment or automatic compliance with his or her expectations. Number 6, is interpersonally exploitative. For example, takes advantage of others to achieve his or her own ends. So, I'm sure that you all can think of people right now that probably meet a lot of these, especially that one. Number 7, lacks empathy, is unwilling to recognize or identify with the feelings and needs of others. Number 8, is often envious of others or believes that others are envious of him or her. And then 9, shows arrogant, haughty behaviors or attitudes. Now, remember what I said in the beginning. What constitutes an actual diagnosis or an actual personality disorder? I'm sure that we know lots of people that fit this kind of stuff sometimes or in certain situations. But it has to be, as we went over, it has to be an ongoing pattern of behavior. And this one in particular starts in like late teens, early adulthood, I think is the word early adulthood. The diagnostic features explain it the best way, and I'm going to read this portion of it because this is where I think people need to understand the difference between someone who has narcissistic tendencies versus someone who has an actual narcissistic personality disorder. Sorry, I have my chat up on my phone. I forgot to look because I'm on a different page, so I can't pull chats up, but I see you guys, so you slid into Star Wars mode. What? Thanks, Scott. Hey, Scott, how are you? You guys talking about Star Wars. Anyways, diagnostic features. The essential feature of narcissistic personality disorder is a pervasive pattern of grandiosity, need for admiration, and lack of empathy that begins by early adulthood and is present in a variety of contexts. Individuals with this disorder have a grandiose sense of self-importance. They routinely overestimate their abilities and inflate their accomplishments, often appearing boastful and pretentious. They may blithely assume that others attribute the same value to their efforts and may be surprised when the praise they expect and feel they deserve is not forthcoming. Often implicit in the inflated judgments of their own accomplishments is an underestimation, a devaluation of the contributions of others. Individuals with narcissistic personality disorder are often preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love. They may ruminate about long overdue admiration and privilege and compare themselves favorably with famous or privileged people. Individuals with narcissistic personality disorder believe that they are superior, special, or unique and expect others to recognize them as such. They may feel that they can only be understood by and should only associate with other people who are special or of high status and may attribute unique, perfect, or gifted qualities to those with whom they associate. Individuals with this disorder believe that their needs are special and beyond the ken of ordinary people. What is beyond the ken of ordinary people? Wow. I'm right here in case you want to follow along. Their own self-esteem is enhanced. For example, mirrored by the idealized value that they assign to those with whom they associate. They are likely to insist on having only the top person, like the best doctor, best lawyer, best hairdresser, best instructor, or being affiliated with the best institutions, but may devalue the credentials of those who disappoint them. So, like, say they get who is considered everywhere the best doctor, but the doctor totally, doesn't give them the care that they expect or the treatment that they want. All of a sudden, even though they're still the best doctor, whatever, let's say they have the best ranking, no, they no longer are in the same, what's the word I'm looking for? The same, I don't know how to say it, the same group basically as the person with narcissistic personality. They feel that they deserve the best, and then when they get who is actually considered the best, and then they're let down by them, it doesn't matter how they're seen by everyone else. They no longer see them as the best, no matter what. Individuals with this disorder generally require excessive admiration. Their self-esteem is almost invariably very fragile. They may be preoccupied with how well they are doing and how favorably they are regarded by others. This often takes the form of a need for constant attention and admiration. They may expect their arrival to be greeted with great fanfare and are astonished if others do not covet their possessions. They may constantly fish for compliments, often with great charm. A sense of entitlement is evident in these individuals' unreasonable expectation of especially favorable treatment. They expect to be catered to and are puzzled or furious when this does not happen. For example, They may assume that they do not have to wait in line and that their priorities are so important that others should defer to them, and then get irritated when others fail to assist in their very important work. I'm right here in case you want to follow along. This sense of entitlement, combined with a lack of sensitivity to the wants and needs of others, may result in the conscious or unwitting exploitation of others. They expect to be given whatever they want or feel they need, no matter what it might mean to others. For example, these individuals may expect great dedication from others and may overwork them without regard for the impact on their lives. They tend to form friendships or romantic relationships only if the other person seems likely to advance their purposes or otherwise enhance their self-esteem. Think about that. They often usurp special privileges and extra resources that they believe they deserve because they are so special. Individuals with narcissistic personality disorder generally have a lack of empathy and have difficulty recognizing the desires, subjective experiences, and feelings of others. They may assume that others are totally concerned about their welfare. They tend to discuss their own concerns in an inappropriate and lengthy detail, while failing to recognize that others also have feelings and needs. I think we can all think of someone like that. They are often contemptuous and impatient with others who talk about their own problems and concerns. These individuals may be oblivious to the hurt their remarks may inflict, exuberantly telling a former lover that I am now in the relationship of a lifetime, boasting of health in front of someone who is sick. Had that happen. When recognized, the needs, desires, or feelings of others are likely to be viewed despairingly as signs of weakness or vulnerability. Those who relate to individuals with narcissistic personality disorder typically find an emotional coldness and lack of reciprocal interest. The individuals are often envious of others or believe that others are envious of them. They may begrudge others their successes or possessions, feeling that they better deserve those achievements, admiration, or privileges. They may harshly devalue the contributions of others, particularly when those individuals have received acknowledgement or praise for their accomplishments. Arrogant, haughty behaviors characterize these individuals. They often display snobbish, disdainful, or patronizing attitudes. For example, an individual with this disorder may complain about a clumsy waiter's rudeness or stupidity, or conclude a medical evaluation with a condescending evaluation of the physician. These are associated features supporting diagnosis. Vulnerability and self-esteem makes individuals with narcissistic personality disorder very sensitive to injury, for criticism, or defeat. Although they may not show it outwardly, criticism may haunt these individuals and may leave them feeling humiliated, degraded, hollow, and empty. They may react with disdain, rage, or defiant counterattack. Such experiences often lead to social withdrawal or an appearance of humility that may mask and protect the grandiosity. Interpersonal relations are typically impaired because of problems derived from entitlement, the need for admiration, and the relative disregard for the sensitivities of others. Though overweening ambition and confidence may lead to high achievement, performance may be disrupted because of intolerance of criticism or defeat. Sometimes vocational functioning can be very low, reflecting an unwillingness to take a risk in competitive or other situations in which defeat is possible. Sustained feelings of shame or humiliation and the attendant self-criticism may be associated with social withdrawal, depressed mood, and persistent depressive disorder, dysthymia, or major depressive disorder. In contrast, sustained periods of grandiosity may be associated with a hypomanic mood. Narcissistic personality disorder is also associated with anorexia nervosa and substance use disorders, especially related to cocaine. Histrionic, borderline, antisocial, and paranoid personality disorders may be associated with narcissistic personality disorder. Now, this stuff goes into more depth about like how rare it is or not, or common or uncommon it is. Um, so it does say right here, if you see this, gender related diagnostic issues. Of those diagnosed, not just called narcissist, of those diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, 50 to 75% of them are male. Go figure. No offense to any male watching this at any point in time, but um so I want to see if there's anything else that's said that's important to go over. This is important. I'm going to read this because it's important to what I brought this topic up for, in the difference of calling someone a narcissist as an adjective, saying that they have narcissistic tendencies, or being diagnosed. This is important here. It says other personality disorders may be confused with narcissistic personality disorder because they have certain features in common. It is therefore important to distinguish, among these disorders based on differences in the characteristic features. However, if an individual has personality features that meet criteria for one or more personality disorders in addition to narcissistic personality disorder, all can be diagnosed. The most useful feature in discriminating narcissistic personality disorder from histrionic, antisocial, and borderline personality disorders, in which the interactive styles are coquettish, callous, and needy, respectively, is the grandiosity characteristic of narcissistic personality disorder. So, the biggest difference, basically, is the grandiosity, how they see themselves above and superior to everyone else. All right. Where was I here? Okay. The relative stability of self-image, as well as the relative lack of self-destructiveness, impulsivity, and abandonment concerns also help distinguish narcissistic personality disorder from borderline personality disorder. Excessive pride in achievements, a relative lack of emotional display, and disdain for others' sensitivities help distinguish narcissistic personality disorder from histrionic personality disorder. Although individuals with borderline, histrionic, and narcissistic personality disorders may require much attention, those with narcissistic personality disorder specifically need that attention to be admiring. So think about, okay, crusty panties. She don't give a shit if her attention is admiring or not. At least that's how I see it. She gets all kinds of hate messaging and hate watching, and she just wants the attention, no matter where it comes from. So this is another specific difference when you look at narcissist as a personality disorder versus someone with like borderline personality or histrionic, as they put. Let's see, where was I? Although individuals with borderline, histrionic, and narcissistic personality disorders may require much attention, though, oh, yeah, I'm reading it again. That's okay, because it's important. This is very important, and it's because it's very much about what I've been talking about in certain people. Although individuals with borderline, histrionic, and narcissistic personality disorders may require much attention, those with narcissistic personality disorder specifically need that attention to be admiring. Individuals with antisocial and narcissistic personality disorder share a tendency to be tough-minded, glib, superficial, exploitative, and unempathic. However, narcissistic personality disorder does not necessarily include characteristics of impulsivity, aggression, and deceit. In addition, individuals with antisocial personality disorder may not be as needy of the admiration and envy of others. And persons with narcissistic personality disorder usually lack the history of conduct disorder in children or in childhood. Conduct disorder is another one. It used to be oppositional defiant disorder. That's another one I could talk about one day, but it's mostly, that's a disorder that's talked about in teens or preteens. Anyways, so in both narcissistic personality disorder and obsessive compulsive personality disorder, the individual may profess a commitment to perfectionism and believe that others cannot do things as well. In contrast to the accompanying self-criticism of those with obsessive compulsive personality disorder, individuals with narcissistic personality disorder are more likely to believe that they have achieved perfection. Suspiciousness and social withdrawal usually distinguish those with schizotypal or paranoid personality disorder from those with narcissistic. When these qualities are present in individuals with narcissistic, they derive primarily from fears of having imperfections or flaws revealed. Many highly successful individuals display personality traits that might be considered narcissistic. This is important. Only when these traits are inflexible, maladaptive, and persisting, and cause significant functional impairment or subjective distress, do they constitute narcissistic personality disorder. This is the biggest statement I can say right now when talking about someone who displays narcissistic tendencies or characteristics versus someone who would meet the criteria to be diagnosed narcissistic personality disorder. So let me read that again. Only when these traits are inflexible, maladaptive, and persisting and cause significant functional impairment or subjective distress do they constitute narcissistic personality disorder. So reading all of these possible symptoms or characteristics or whatever you want to call them, they can meet many, many people. So saying someone is acting narcissistic or has narcissistic tendencies is more appropriate to most of the people that are called narcissist, or are told by random people that they have a narcissistic personality disorder. Most people don't meet this criteria because of this, that it's not, it's not. Most people have a what's the word? They have a what's the word I'm looking for? Flexible, I guess I can use, because only because I just saw the word inflexible. Their personality changes, and not their overall personality, but almost their mood, or by their surroundings. So in a certain surrounding, someone, or a certain environment, someone may display a lot of these, but in other environments, they may not. So let's say YouTube. Someone who likes attention, especially if they don't care if it's good or bad, that doesn't make them a narcissistic personality disorder. Because they could be off YouTube and not be anything like that. They just seek the attention based on this atmosphere or this environment. I'm not saying that there aren't people on here or in this environment that could easily qualify or meet these criteria, but I'm saying most of them don't. One of the biggest points in this is not only that it's inflexible, that it's constant, it's that it causes this right here, significant functional impairment. So it actually has to affect their lives. And sadly enough, that's not that hard to attribute to even someone that has narcissistic tendencies, because depending on the situation, it could easily cause some impairment in a social setting, but it wouldn't affect every social setting. I'm hoping this makes sense. I've always warned that I would never have been a good teacher. This is why I would have never went into teaching. I don't know how to always express what's going on in my brain. When I give examples or when I say things, I hope that you guys get the gist of what I'm saying one way or the other. And I've been reading, so ignoring the chat. So I just want to check in with you guys. Oh, Jeannie Lynn's here. Hey, Morg. You guys are here now. I hope you're enjoying my lesson. Morg says, I'll take the good kind of attention too. Any kind it's all fine. Yeah, that's a good example, Jeannie Lynn. Jody Arias. She's another, psychologically speaking, her behavior intrigues me, but obviously not as a human being, someone with empathy and morals. But it was definitely interesting to watch, especially when she went cuckoo in her interview in the police station, started doing headstands and shit. You want to talk about attention seeking. Did I miss anybody else that came in? I do field study in other community I hang out in. Lots of personality disorders over there. Oh, yeah? Which one? Oh, yeah. Lori Daybell's another one. See, this is the problem right here, Jeannie Lynn. When you talk about ODD, which is operational, oh my God, I can't ever say it right. Operational. Now all of a sudden I forgot which one it is. Operational or ops. It's defiant disorder. Why am I getting it all screwed up? I just had it a minute ago. I said it. Why can't I find it? Why is it like literally just gone out of my head? I swear to God. I hate when I do this. Like I'll start talking and I literally can't even think of the damn word. Oppositional. Oppositional. Thank you. Oppositional defiant disorder is the same thing as conduct disorder. They're technically, technically they're not interchangeable, but in the psychology world, they've changed one to the other. But my point in that is that ODD is not at all anything to do with being ADD or ADHD. Completely different. And because ODD and conduct disorder specifically include things that are like, the title says it alone, conduct and oppositional. They do things to that are, I want to say against the law, but that's not even it. They're against the rules. They do things to specifically defy rules, guidelines, things that are set, and laws. Can be all of the above. People with ADD, it's literally the way their brain takes in information. It's not even close to the same thing. And it's so hard when people try to lump especially kids into these kinds of things when they're not even remotely the same. Jeannie Lynn says, it might say that, but I don't agree with that. DSM says, because my father-in-law and my ex have same characteristics. It affects all their friendships, affects how they react with people and meet 80% of the time, I'm assuming. Well, that's the thing. That's one of the biggest things I hate using the word qualify, but it's really to really attribute a diagnosis like this to someone. It has to affect their outward relationships. It has to affect their lives in pretty much a substantial way. And if it does, then they would easily qualify. But there are, it's always guidelines. Mark, I seek a lot of Dungeons and Dragons related attention on the internet, so I seem to have autism at least. Oh boy, oh boy. Jeannie says, I'm not agreeing with that DSM because my ex lies his way through everything and he was completely narcissistic and manages to get through life that way. Well, he could easily be narcissistic personality. I just wanted to go over this so that people could understand the difference between actual diagnoses and tendencies. I agree with you there. And that's another one. That's another one on my list that I want to do. The difference between a psychopath and a sociopath, because a lot of people interchange those as well. And while they do have some similarities, or a lot of similarities, there is a couple distinct differences between a sociopath and a psychopath. And that'll be another one. That'll be another psych night. An independent comic book scene called Comic Skate. It's all trolls, grifters, and psychos. It's pretty fun. There's not many comics, though, oddly. Right, but they do say ADHD kids are prone to ODD because of their behaviors if not helped early on. That could definitely be the case. But they're, especially way back when, not so much now, but way back when like Ritalin first started getting prescribed, it was the number one overprescribed medication ever. People just wanted their kids to behave, and so they were like, "Nope, my kid has ADD, give him Ritalin." It was all bad. It can be subjective. Mona G, definitely. Because again, it goes to how these people act in certain situations. And people perceive things differently, especially attitudes and behaviors. But that's why there has to be some sort of guideline, because almost everyone in the world can show some sort of narcissistic or well, just for lack of, we're sticking to narcissists. So many people can display a narcissistic characteristic or tendency and not be not an actual narcissist or a narcissistic personality, um depending on the situation. And some people can perceive that one situation or that one behavior in that situation as narcissistic, and some people could perceive it else totally differently. So yeah, 100%. Original Dungeons and Dragons. You're good, Darth Vader, sweetie. Just take care, okay, honey? Only met one girl in my life that was a sociopath, and she scared the shit out of me. Tried to off herself in front of her son, but lied her way through life completely. Oh God, that's horrible. See, stuff like that scares me, you know, when kids are involved. That's why I can't do the court stuff with that involves kids. It just, I can't. There you go. Mork says, Darth Vader, if you do, just claim you were making a joke about Dungeons and Dragons. So Darbader says, okay, who else has that mask? Someone almost has almost an identical pic. I'm assuming she's talking about Morg's, but I just can't put my finger on who it is. You might have seen Morg. Morg is you were probably thinking of Morg, but because he did change his handle. But I know he also took that pic from somewhere else. I just can't remember what he told me the other day where he got that pic from or what it was. I remember the helmet and the goggles you were telling me, and for some reason it's not coming to mind. Not for some my memory when I am so sleep deprived is so bad. What is MTG? Oops. 2026. I'll say MTG. What is MTG? Oh, that's the one where the woman survived. That one where the son testified against the dad. What's his name? Honig or Koenig? Magic the Gathering. Duh. I'm so dumb. I should have got that one. Yeah, the one where the woman wouldn't let go of his testicles. Oh, did you guys see that? That's something funny if you want to see it. Oh my God. Watch this. Hold on. Let me get it. Let me find it. I think it was Loophole Lawyer who put one together about it. Let me see. I swear it was. Maybe it wasn't. Damn. It had to have been one I watched. Hold on, let me Google it because I know I just watched it. I know specifically because they were making fun of how many times he said the word testicle. It was so funny. whenever I want to see something, I literally can't find it. I wonder, it's probably in my history. Hold on. But I watch so much YouTube. I don't know if I'll be able to find it. Let's see. Then things play when I fall asleep that I didn't even want to watch. Ends up in my history. Jeez, oh, Pete. I get so frustrated at myself when I do this shit because it was really funny. You can see how much fucking YouTube I watch. It's ridiculous. That's a good one. I don't want to share other people's content, but this one's a good one too. 25 signs of someone who is secretly a psychopath. List 25 is a really good YouTube page if anyone's interested. He does stuff on it, so much stuff. So good. I wonder if it was a short. Maybe that's why I can't find it. Damn it. I haven't looked at comments. Sorry, guys. I really wanted to show this video, so I get on. That's what I get hooked on. Like when I want to show something, I gotta start saving it. Oh, here it is. I found it. I knew it was loophole.
She grabs me by the testicles.
Play ball. We're going to keep track of how many times poor Gerhard here references the word testicles on our scoreboard.
She grabbed your testicles, is that right?
Yes.
How hard did she grab it?
Was holding on to me by my testicles, basically.
Did she grab it and let go, or did she grab it and hold on?
She grabbed it and held on. I try to free my testicles. I'm like thrashing with, and I get both hands free, and I'm trying to get her to let go of my testicles. And then she hits me with a rock on the side of the face.
The scoreboard indicates 5 balls to 0 strikes. Let's keep watching.
She's holding on to your testicles. You're kind of focused on that, obviously.
On the ground, and she was grabbing my testicles. Everything after the grabbing of the testicles happened very quickly.
And you weren't timing it or anything. You did just your best. Okay. So now she's squeezing your testicles, kind of dealing with that. Still got your testicles?
Yeah. So
Another ball.
she's like holding my testicle and just like hitting me like this.
And now do you stop dealing with your testicles?
Just focused on the rock at this point.
Okay.
Yeah. Wrestle the rock out of her hand.
She still have your testicles?
Yes.
Still squeezing them?
Yes. I hit her with the rock.
And when you did, was she still holding on to your testicles?
Yes.
At least initially?
Yes.
Were you able to safely retreat and get away from her?
No.
Why not?
She was holding on to me.
Including your testicles?
Yes.
This seems to be a classic he said, she said, but one thing is for sure. She definitely had him by the balls.
She grabs me by the testicles.
Play ball. We're going to keep track of how many times poor Gerhard here references the word testicles on our score.
That's so funny. I haven't watched any of the trial. Looks like Scott, you watched it. What do you think? Is it already over? Is it? Oh, it's verdict watch. Okay, Hawaii versus Gerhard Koenig. Let's see. The verdict hasn't come out yet, has it? I want to watch the closing arguments now, just because. Let's see. D9. What did you have here? So you closing arguments and verdict. Watch. What channel is that, Scott? Because I see the defense's closing argument. What about the prosecution? Here, we'll just watch both. Never mind. Let's just do this.
Thank you.
He looks like he's 12.
A motive.
Dude, okay, Scott, is this the guy? This is the prosecutor? He literally looks like he's 12 years old. Oh my God. Criminally competent. Thanks, Scott. Well, I already have it here. Well, let's just do this. But he literally just, he looks fucking like a teenager.
A beating. A
You
confession.
guys said the same thing.
Ladies and gentlemen, beyond a reasonable doubt, the state has proven that on March 24th, 2025,
Hold on.
Gerhard Koenig.
You're a mod for that one too, Scott. Will they mind if I use it? I don't want to just yank someone's. That's why I normally go to court TV and shit, because oh well. But like other people's coverage, I don't like taking their coverage so that I don't, take their views or anything. But if you are a managing mod, do you think they would mind? I'm sorry though. He looks like he's a teenage. He looks even. My son looks young, and he looks younger than my son, and my son's 22. Okay? Oh, I'm already subscribed to that channel too. Criminally Obsessed. Oh, well, let's go. Let's just watch.
Tried to kill his wife, Ariel. The state has proven beyond reasonable doubt that Gerhard Koenig committed the offense of attempted murder in the second degree. There are two elements, as Judge read to you a couple minutes ago. Element number one, on or about March 24, 2025, that if in the city and county of Honolulu, the defendant intentionally engaged in conduct. Element number two, we'll get back to in a moment, but the conduct, starting with element one, what is the conduct? What did defendant do? First, he tried to push her. That's the first conduct the defendant did. The second, the syringe. He tried to inject her with an unknown substance. And third, the beating with the rock. That is the conduct the defendant engaged in intentionally. That is the conduct that we are here to talk about for the last several weeks and for today. The second element, that conduct, under the circumstances under which defendant believed them to be, was a substantial step in a course of conduct intended or known to be practically certain by the defendant to cause the death of Ariel Koenig. So element number one, simple, it's conduct. Element number two defines what that conduct is, what it's meant to do. And the conduct in this case was meant to kill. The intent behind each one, plan A, the push, the intent was to kill. When plan A didn't work, the defendant moved on to plan B. Plan B, inject her with the syringe, knock her out, push her off the cliff. The intent behind plan B was to kill. Plan C, when the first two plans didn't work, beat her with the rock, knock her out, drag her over, or just simply kill her outright. The intent behind every single plan was to kill Ariel. Every plan, every backup plan ends in Ariel's death. A substantial step starts with the plan. The plan's in yellow because it's...
Well, of course, Scott, you can share her link. Definitely. Since she's got both of them, let's just play this one. So let's go to criminally obsessed. Oh, criminally competent. I just wrote the wrong one. Sorry. Competent. Because I was thinking of this one. Competent. My bad. Thank you, Lacey. We're going to subscribe.
Gerhard Koenig was present.
Morning, Mr. Talking. Morning, Mr. Grips. Morning, Dr. Koenig. Gentlemen, you can all be seated. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, good morning to all of you. Welcome back to courtroom 15.
Afternoon.
That one's too small.
I have to admit, it was a long weekend when I started court yesterday and I walked in. When I didn't see you, I thought it was a bit odd. So it's good to see all of you here back in court. Here's the schedule for today. I've had a chance to talk about it with the attorneys. We're going to finish up the presentation of evidence this morning. We don't expect it to take very long. And then I'm going to be reading the jury instructions.
I'm going to go back to court TV only because it's bigger. The way she does it, it's hard to watch on here. But thank you, Lacey. I've subscribed. I always look for new true crime. At criminally competent, everyone.
Because it's not a substantial step yet, it's just a plan. Next, the hike. Again, it's in yellow because he hasn't taken that last step. That last step to show he's committed to carrying out that plan, that shows he's committed to killing Ariel. The first time you get that is with the push. When the defendant takes his hands, tells Ariel, I'm sick of this shit, and tries to push her back off the cliff. That is the first substantial step the defendant took. That didn't work. Ariel went to the ground. Ariel protected herself. The defendant took the next substantial step. He took that syringe out and he tried to inject her. But Ariel fought back. Ariel fought back, fighting for her life, knocks the syringe away, and then the defendant moves on to plan C, his third substantial step, where he takes that rock, Exhibit 2, this rock right here, the same rock that you've all held, he takes this rock and he beats her with it again and again and again and again. Those 3 steps are the substantial steps the defendant took to carry out his plan to kill Ariel Koenig. Before we get any further, what is not a defense? The result of the defendant's conduct. The severity of Ariel's injuries, you'll hear many times trying to minimize them. That is not a defense. The law treats somebody the same, whether they're successful or not. The law treats you the same, no matter how good you are at executing that plan, no matter how good you are at actually succeeding in killing somebody, the law treats you the same. As an example, somebody who tries to shoot somebody, who points a gun and tries to end a life, but misses, they've committed attempted murder the same way the defendant committed, in a similar way, in a similar idea as the way defendant did it in this case. You cannot look only at the results to determine intent. You have to look at everything together. And when you look at everything, it shows one clear answer beyond a reasonable doubt, and that's that the defendant intended to kill her. Let's review how we got there. First, we have Ariel's testimony. She testified in 3 different areas. First, Ariel told you what happened on the Palipuka Trail on March 24th, 2025. She told you what happened when she went up the trail. She told you how she was afraid, how she was nervous about the heights. She told you how the defendant reacted. She told you what happened when she met up with the defendant later, that he pushed her, that she went to the ground, that he took the syringe, that she fought back, and then ultimately he took that rock, this same rock, and hit her in the head again and again. Then Ariel told you what happened leading up to that day. She told you about their marital issues. She told you about her messages with Jeffrey Miller. She told you all of that. Embarrassing as it may be, she put it all out there. And then Ariel told you about her treatment, her medical treatment, her recovery. She showed you the scars that she carries to this day. She showed you the scars on her head where she will never grow hair again.
No.
And everything that Ariel said is corroborated. These are the credibility factors. These are listed in your instructions that you should be considering for every witness who testified. And I'm not going to go through all of them right now, but there's a couple that are relevant for Ariel here. First, appearance, demeanor, intelligence, candor, frankness. Ariel testified in a straightforward, coherent manner. She testified clearly. There were no histrionics, barely any tears. It was straightforward. This happened, then this happened, then this happened. It was not over-dramatized. It was not over-exaggerated. It was straightforward and simple and coherent. She was open to cross-examination. When the answer was yes, she said, yes, sir. When the answer was no, she said, no, sir. And when she didn't know, she said she didn't know. But the last factor is the most important here. The extent to which Ariel's testimony is supported by other evidence. What this means, simply, is corroboration. What level of corroboration is there? There is a lot. Ariel is corroborated by the physical evidence, the scene and location, the rock, the blood evidence, the injuries, the medical supplies. Ariel's corroborated by the digital forensics. What was going on the defendant's computer corroborates what Ariel said. Ariel's corroborated by the other witnesses, by their sworn testimony, by Emil Koenig. Ariel's corroborated by Amanda Morris. She's corroborated by Sarah Boxbaum. She's corroborated by HPD. And in the most important ways, she's even corroborated by what the defendant told Emil. You've seen the photos of the scene. Ariel's testimony is corroborated. There's the cliff. It's right there. There's the bloody, the blood pool in the bush where the defendant was on top of her, where the defendant was hitting her. The physical evidence of the scene, the blood, the crushed plants, the location of this so close to the cliff edge, all corroborates Ariel. The physical evidence, the rock, corroborates Ariel. You've held the rock. You've seen it. You know how much it weighs. You know how sharp it can be on the sides. You've seen the photos of Ariel's blood and Ariel's hair on that rock. The rock corroborates what Ariel said. The DNA evidence. The DNA evidence shows two things very clearly. One, every single sample that was positive for human blood had a likelihood ratio of over 1 trillion for Ariel Koenig. Every single one. The blood on the rock, the blood on the samples from the trail, the blood all over defendant's shirt and shorts. Every single one had a likelihood ratio of over 1 trillion for Ariel. Reason and common sense tells you all of that blood is Ariel Koenig's, not the defendant's. Second, Ariel Koenig's DNA was on both sides of the rock. And think back to how Ariel demonstrated what she did. She held up her hand. She held up her hand trying to block the defendant. She suffered defensive injuries from it on her fingers, on her thumb, and that's how her DNA is on that rock, because she touched it. Her touch DNA is on the rock because she touched that rock to try and stop the defendant. The search warrant of defendant's work bag on Maui corroborates Ariel's statement. It shows clearly, conclusively, that defendant had actual possession. Not some sort of theoretical, oh, he's a doctor, he can get this stuff. No, he had actual possession of syringes, he had actual possession of vials, he had actual possession of drugs that can kill. This isn't some, he could have gotten them, he had them. This corroborates Ariel's testimony. And more importantly, these drugs weren't stored in a controlled environment. They were stored in his home, where he had access. He could take them, didn't have to log them or anything, just remove them from his home and do whatever he wanted with them. This corroborates Ariel as well. Lastly, Ariel is corroborated by her injuries. The physical evidence of Ariel's injuries corroborates exactly what she said. Think of the injuries to the top of her head. The stellate laceration. Dr. Grosjean told you there was debris throughout the entire injury. There were rocks. The defendant swung this rock so hard that pieces of rock broke off into Ariel's scalp. And there was dirt throughout the entire laceration. And the middle of Ariel's scalp, he described as macerated or crushed. Went all the way down to the bone. You've seen the photo of Ariel from the front. You've seen what's missing from her head. You've seen that there is a chunk of her scalp that is gone. It's right there in that photo. And you've seen that she didn't just have scalp injuries.
That's so
She had injuries above her eye. She had injuries below her eye. She had injuries to her hand, not even to just her thumb. Her thumb was only where there was a break. But she had injuries to 3 of her fingers, her thumb, her index, and her middle finger. Ariel's testimony is corroborated by the physical evidence in this case. Ariel's also corroborated by the digital forensics, the digital evidence. The digital evidence tells you what defendant was thinking, what he was thinking from December 2024 to March 2025. It shows you, that first of all, it confirms the motive. It confirms the strong motive defendant had to kill because he was looking up infidelity. He was looking up Ariel's financials. He was looking up his prior divorce. He was going into Ariel's hard drive to look up documents on her computer or from her computer about divorce. He even went to the point where he was buying a spy device to spy on Ariel. This shows what was going on in defendant's mind. It wasn't some simple research. It wasn't taxes. It wasn't self-help. It was obsession. It was an obsession with Ariel. It was an obsession with infidelity. It was an obsession with going over those financials, and it was a plan for divorce. The second thing that the digital forensic shows, most importantly, it shows defendant's familiarity with that hike. It shows you what the defendant looked at before deciding the Polypuka Trail is the hike that he should be taking Ariel on. It showed the defendant this picture right here. It showed that the defendant was only interested in difficult hikes. Easy hikes were not for him. The defendant wanted difficult hikes, steep trails, big drops, narrow trails. This is where the defendant wanted to take Ariel. This trail, about a foot wide, somewhere around there. One push is all it would take on this trail. Nothing for her to grab onto. One push, and it's a tragic accident. That is what the defendant was researching. He knew that this trail was not popular from his research. He knew that 99% of people wouldn't be going on this trail. And he knew that this is where he would execute his plan. And he didn't share this with Ariel. He didn't share this website with her, so she could make that informed decision before she went on that hike with him. She had no idea what kind of trail she was getting into that day. Lastly, Ariel is corroborated by the other witnesses. Ariel is corroborated by Amanda Morris. Amanda Morris, the first person on the scene. Amanda told you the sequence of events. 3 things. First, she heard a woman's voice screaming, "Help, help me." And she gets up the trail because she thinks somebody's fallen off. She knows it's dangerous, she thinks somebody's fallen. And she sees the defendant over Ariel. Amanda sees the defendant over Ariel. She sees the defendant with this rock in his hand, and she sees the defendant hit her. And when she sees that, Ariel cries, "Help, he's trying to kill me." And Amanda sees how the defendant responds. How the defendant responds is nothing. He just looks at her. Ariel's also corroborated by Sarah Buxbaum, the second woman on the scene, the second hiker who intervened. Sarah came in behind Amanda. She saw the defendant standing over Ariel. She saw the defendant standing with that rock. And most importantly, Sarah looked the defendant in the eye. Sarah made eye contact with the defendant and told you how that made her feel. It made her feel unsettled. It made her feel so afraid for herself and her safety when she was looking at the defendant in the eye. It made Sarah feel so unsafe that she and Amanda went back down the trail before they called 911 because they realized this was a dangerous situation for them. They realized after looking in his eyes what could happen to them. And they took those steps after seeing what was in the defendant's eyes. After seeing
Have a great
that look,
night, Darth
they took
Vader.
steps to protect themselves. Listen to Sarah's voice on that 911 call. It's Exhibit 3. You'll have it. Listen to her voice, and you can hear what she's thinking about. You can hear the worry in her voice. You can hear that she's afraid for her own safety after she's seen the defendant. It's all there. And you may hear argument today, or have maybe thought to yourself, well, Amanda and Sarah only saw the end. The evidence shows that Amanda and Sarah didn't see the end of the incident. They caused the end of the incident. Because when they showed up, that is the only thing that stopped the defendant. Ariel screaming for help didn't stop the defendant. Ariel fighting back for her life didn't stop the defendant. The only thing that stopped the defendant, the only thing that was enough for him to stop, is 2 eyewitnesses coming up on the scene and seeing him beat her with that rock. The only thing that got him to stop was being caught red-handed. The responding officers, Corporal Wu, Corporal Chun, they corroborate Ariel as well. They showed you the hike. You saw the hike on their body cam. You saw their struggles with trying to get up the hike. They showed you the scene. Once more, right there in the foreground of this photo, that's where this happened. That's where the beating with the rock happened. And right there, just a couple feet away, that's where the defendant tried to push her. They showed you Ariel's condition. Ariel's condition immediately after the defendant did this. They showed you that. They showed you the closest thing to what the defendant last saw Ariel as. And they even caught it on their body cam. They even caught Ariel's condition as she states her name.
Ariel coming. A-R-I-E-L-L-E. Birthday is March 24th, 1989.
You heard Ariel testify for hours. But also, you heard in this video her slurred voice, her heavy breathing, her condition after the defendant beat her with that rock. She was not okay. The manhunt corroborates Ariel as well. It took 3 different agencies, HPD, DLNR's DoCare, HFD, several different units from them, SED, SSD, a K9 unit, the major events unit to search for drones. It took 2 drones, 1 helicopter, and after 8 hours, or almost 8 hours, they were still not able to find the defendant. And that tells you one incredibly important thing. The defendant did not want to be found. The arrest corroborates Ariel just as much. Officers Nicola, Koki, and Borges approached Ariel in their vehicle. Officer Nicola testified he got within an arm's reach of of the defendant before he jumped out the car.
Objection, misstates his testimony.
He got within an arm's length or close to an arm's length before he got out that car and tried to apprehend the defendant. He identified himself as police. And how did the defendant respond? The defendant tried to flee into the woods. It took a total of 835 pounds of HPD officers, to subdue the defendant. That's how much he was resisting. He knew they were police. They identified themselves as police. And as Officer Nicola testified, the defendant, in his attempt to get away, fell on his face, and then Officer Nicola fell on top of him. That's why you see the grass on the defendant's head. That's why you see the dirt on the left side of the defendant's face, because that's where he hit the ground. That's where he hit the ground while he was being arrested. And the defendant's own actions, finally, also corroborate what Ariel told you. Defendant's actions corroborate Ariel's testimony. First, he fled the scene. Second, he collected the evidence from the scene. He collected Ariel's phone. He collected Ariel's purse. And he collected those syringes. He took all those items from the scene and he disposed of them. Ariel's mom still tried to ping her phone, and it was up at the poly hours later, but they could never find it. And think back where the police, where DoCare couldn't search. They couldn't search the bottom of the cliff. They couldn't get down that way. They searched the whole mountainside, couldn't find it. But the bottom of that cliff that's several hundred feet tall, that's where they couldn't search. Defendant confessed. Defendant called Emil just minutes after the incident and told Emil, I tried to kill Ariel. But she got away. And lastly, the defendant hid in the woods for almost 8 hours. These actions that the defendant took corroborate what Ariel told you. They make sense. That being said, the defendant in this case has testified. And you need to judge his testimony the exact same way that you judge anybody's. At the beginning of this trial, you heard a theme, some alliteration with a theme, unwilling or unfaithful, unwilling, untrue. But ladies and gentlemen, after listening to the defendant's testimony, you only need one word to summarize it. One word. Unbelievable. The defendant's story. She started an argument. The defendant's story is that somehow Ariel, on her birthday, on an unfamiliar hike next to a massive cliff, decided to start an argument. Does that make sense to you? No. Ariel decided somehow to start an argument about she said she wanted to go back and continue to work with Jeff Miller. She wants to travel with Jeff Miller. Does that make sense that Ariel would bring this up on that cliffside? No. It contradicts common sense. It even contradicts the defendant's own testimony where he told you they don't talk about this outside of counseling. The defendant told you that, and that's what worked for them. And somehow Ariel's bringing it up, ruining her birthday on a hike. Ladies and gentlemen, it's unbelievable. The next part, the defendant's story, she pushed me. The defendant says he felt a hard push from behind. He was looking out over the cliff. He barely holds himself on. He turns around, and Ariel's already 5 to 10 feet away. Ladies and gentlemen, unbelievable. Ariel was trying to push him off that cliff. She wouldn't be that far away. She would have been right behind him, trying to push him again. Defendant's story, she pulled me down on top of her. Think about how that makes sense. Defendant's story is that then he approached Ariel. That he grabbed her arms. And Ariel somehow responded by pulling him down on top of her and not letting him go. Defendant's bigger than her. Defendant's stronger than her. Ask yourself, what person would hold a bigger, stronger person on top of them as an act of aggression? It doesn't make sense. It's unbelievable. Defendant's story, she hit me first. Somehow while Ariel's sitting down, or while Ariel's underneath him, while he's in the position of power, while he's on top of her, the story is that Ariel held him down so he couldn't escape, grabbed his genitals, wrapped her legs around him, and then she picks up a rock and hits him in the face. And as the defendant told you, he said, she hit me one time really good, and then she keeps swinging. The same rock that defendant used to beat Ariel? Really? The same rock that defendant has told you he only used 2 times, that he only hit her twice with. Ladies and gentlemen, it's unbelievable. The same rock, no, you can tell it's different injuries. This is the photo of the defendant immediately after his arrest. This is the photo of the defendant almost 8 hours after the incident up on the trail, after the defendant tried to kill Ariel. Yes, there's a small dark spot
big
on his cheek.
discrepancy
Is it a
in
bruise?
injuries, dude.
Is it dirt? I don't know. This is Ariel. The idea that this same rock caused these different injuries is unbelievable, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. Sorry.
The idea that Ariel could hit him really good, and that's it, unbelievable. This is the defendant at the hospital that night, and this is Ariel at the hospital on the same day. Again, minor bruise, major laceration. The idea that these injuries were caused by the same rock, completely unbelievable. You can only see that by looking at the next day. Look at the defendant 1 day later. There's nothing. There's no more. Ariel's got her head wrapped up. She's still got these injuries on her eye. The defendant's story is unbelievable. And lastly, the defendant told you that he wanted to turn himself in, that's what he was doing when he left the trail. Sunset was coming soon. The sun was getting low. But instead of doing the logical thing and walking down the trail where he knew the police would be, the defendant decides he has to come out of the forest onto the road. The defendant doesn't go back to the trailhead. He doesn't put his SIM card back in his phone. He doesn't turn his phone on because he's not trying to surrender himself. He's not trying to turn himself in. He's trying to escape.
Yeah.
And that's why he ran when the police apprehended him. That's why he resisted. The defendant's story, unbelievable. The defendant's story, unlike Ariel's, where Ariel is corroborated, the defendant's story is filled with contradictions. The defendant is contradicted by Amanda and Sarah. Somehow, Ariel finally let go of his private parts, and then he just stands there and looks. He's not on the ground writhing in pain. Does that make sense? He says that she held on so hard that he couldn't escape. Does it make sense that afterwards he would just stand there and stare? No. The defendant is contradicted by the physical evidence. He's contradicted by the fact that there's no blood of his up there. There's no evidence of injuries that support what defendant says happened. He's even contradicted by his own hired doctor. The defendant told you he hit her twice. No more. But even his own doctor said 2 to 3 hits to the scalp. Hits to the face. Hits to the fingers. So even the defendant's own witness shows that he hit her more than twice. He hit her, add them all up, 4, 5, 6, could be any of those times. He hit her again and again and again and again. And he only told you 2 times. Ladies and gentlemen, it's unbelievable. He told you he removed his SIM card with the paperclip. Well, state 72 through states 86, that's all the photos. That's all the contents of defendant's backpack. Where's that paperclip? He could have just as easily used that syringe. Open his SIM card, dispose of the syringe. Hiding evidence 2 ways at once. The substantial step again. He made the plan. He made the plan to go hiking that day. He didn't share with Ariel what hike they were going on. He didn't share the details of that hike with Ariel. He didn't share the dangers of that hike with Ariel because his plan was to push her off that cliff. So they start the hike, and Ariel deviates from the plan. Ariel doesn't go up to that section from the photo, the super narrow section with no trees. Ariel doesn't want to go up there. So the defendant improvises. The defendant takes a different cliff. The defendant sees his last chance when they take this selfie, his last chance before they get to that lower part of the trail. And he takes it. He takes that chance to try and push Ariel off. He takes that chance. He makes that substantial step. And plan A, the push, doesn't work. Ariel falls to the ground. He can't push her off anymore. So he takes that next step. He pulls out the syringe. Plan B, and he tries to stab her with it. Plan C, when that doesn't work, he takes that rock and he hits her well over 2 times. He hits her again. He hits her again. It doesn't matter that she's blocking. It doesn't matter that she's screaming. The only thing that gets him to stop is these 2 women who walk up. That's it. You have gotten instructions about self-defense. It should be clear. The defendant was using deadly force in this case. This rock is known to the defendant to cause death or serious bodily injury. You don't need to be a doctor, although he is. And he's actually treated patients who've had rocks fall on them. So the defendant is well aware of the damage that he was doing. He's more than aware because it was his intent. It was his intent to cause that damage. It was his intent to cause death. So yes, it is clear the defendant was using deadly force. And because of that, self-defense doesn't apply. Or self-defense does apply, but defendant cannot claim it because he was the initial aggressor. He was the one who started the physical altercation. He was the one who used deadly force. And lastly, he had a duty to retreat. When using deadly force, before you use that deadly force, the law states you have a duty to retreat. And the defendant didn't do that.
Incomplete statement on the law.
Objection overruled. Ladies and gentlemen, the court instructed you on what the applicable law is. You need to follow the court's instructions as read out to you and as it's provided in the jury instructions that you have.
The defendant did not follow the law. The defendant attacked her. Self-defense is not applicable. The state has disproven it beyond a reasonable doubt because the defendant was the initial aggressor. The defendant was the first one to use force. Based on these facts, self-defense is not applicable. Next, you're given instruction on extreme mental or emotional disturbance. This is a long instruction. We'll keep it simple. There's no evidence that the defendant was acting under extreme mental or emotional disturbance when he tried to kill Ariel. Don't be confused by his testimony. He did say he was under severe emotional distress, but he said that after he tried to kill Ariel. He said he was under severe emotional distress after he started to think about how this would affect his job, how this would affect his life. He was under severe emotional distress after he began to think about the consequences of his actions and how his actions would affect himself. That's what that is. The defendant was not under extreme mental or emotional disturbance when he tried to kill her. He only became that way when he began to think about the consequences. The second part of that instruction states that the defendant's self-control, the defendant's logical thinking is important here. It shows the defendant, when plan A didn't work, he moved to plan B. When plan B didn't work, he moved to plan C. And when he got caught, he fled the scene, he hid the evidence, and he hid himself. That shows the defendant was using logical thinking. The defendant was solving problems as they came. He was not acting under extreme mental or emotional disturbance. Okay, you got a list of other included offenses. You got a list of a bunch of assault charges that are included in the attempted murder and second degree charge. When you think about those, just think one thing. He did more. This is what he did. Assault in the third degree, causing bodily injury. Ladies and gentlemen, that means physical pain. He did more. He did more than cause physical pain to Ariel. Assault in the second degree. He did more. Yes, the defendant caused a major laceration to Ariel's head, or severe laceration. The defendant caused a bone fracture to Ariel's thumb. Yes, he did those things, but he did more. But he did more because he was trying to kill her. Attempted assault in the first degree, same thing. Defendant took actions that he knew would cause a substantial risk of death. Yes, but he did more. Because the evidence all shows that the defendant wasn't intending to do an assault. The defendant was intending to kill. All right, 3 things: motive, a beating, and a confession. You've seen through this trial the defendant's motive. He was upset, he was angry, and wherever he turned, Ariel wasn't being punished. First, he talks to Ariel's best friend, tries to air the dirty laundry, but the best friend stays on Ariel's side. Deanna stays on Ariel's side. She's not punished. Then he emails Andrea Miller. Giving this other woman Ariel's personal contact information, her cell number, her personal email. But Andrea Miller never responds. Ariel's not punished. And then he goes to counseling. They go to marriage counseling. And instead of focusing on the affair, what do they focus on? These intimacy issues, these issues that Ariel testified about, these issues that were defendant's fault. Everything the defendant tried to do made sure Ariel was never punished. So he did it himself. Every response defendant had to this emotional affair showed the defendant's need to control Ariel. He wanted to control where she lived. He wanted to separate this woman from her 18-month-old child. That was his response. His response to finding out was, you should move out. He wanted to control her job. He wanted her to quit. He wanted her to be dependent on him. Because once Ariel quit her job, it's much harder to divorce. She has no more income. She can't go find another remote worker, nuclear engineer job. The defendant knew how much a divorce would cost. He was looking at his own documents, his own records from his prior divorce. He was looking at his own records that showed how much he paid in his prior divorce, because that's what he was thinking about. He was doing that math. He was doing that math on what it would cost to divorce Ariel. but he would give up. And he just couldn't stop thinking about it. He couldn't stop thinking about this emotional affair that he's built up in his head. And because he couldn't stop thinking about it, he made a plan. He made his plan to kill Ariel. The beating. Plan C, the third substantial step, the one that's the most visible, the one where she got these injuries. The defendant took the rock. He picked it up. He swung at Ariel again and again and again and again and again. That many swings shows that the intent was not just to hurt. It was not just to defend. The intent was to end her life. That's what the number of swings tells you in this case. And Ariel's only relief, the only thing that stopped him, was the defendant being caught in the act. It was the intervention of Amanda Morris and Sarah Bucksbaum. That's it. So we end with the confession. 10:42 a.m., just a couple minutes after this happened, the defendant calls Emil. It's a video call, not a phone call. So Emil could see what the defendant was saying. He could see the defendant's face. He could see the defendant's mouth moving. There's no gray area with this confession. As Emil testified, he has no doubt about what the defendant told him. There's no phantom gust of wind that came up. There's nothing like that. The defendant confessed to Emil. He told Emil that he tried to kill Ariel. He told Emil why. He told Emil that Ariel got away. He told Emil that Ariel was having an affair. That doesn't sound like a goodbye suicide message, does it? He told Emil that he was at the end of this rope. And think back to the last thing that the defendant told Ariel before he tried to kill her. He told Ariel, I'm sick of this shit. That's corroborated that he's at the end of his rope. Same idea. What didn't he tell the defendant? What didn't the defendant tell Emil? Nothing about self-defense. Nothing about Ariel attacking him. Nothing about what he testified to you. Is that reasonable? Does that make sense? No. 10:42 a.m., the defendant FaceTime video calls Emil. He confesses. And Emil's next step, after being put in that situation, after being put in a situation as a 19-year-old that he had no want to be part of, Emil does what he does. He goes and tells his grandparents. He goes and tells them what the defendant said. And Judith Mast, ends up texting the defendant, 11:33. She texts the defendant, is Ari okay? She asks the defendant about her daughter. And the defendant says nothing. He doesn't respond. But what he does do shows his intent. What he does do, he calls Emil again and he asks him, did you tell anybody? That shows the guilty conscience of the defendant. That shows that the defendant was not acting in self-defense. That shows the defendant was thinking about what his actions would do to himself. He was thinking about himself. He wasn't thinking about Ariel. He wasn't thinking about her condition. It was only himself. So, ladies and gentlemen, there's one verdict and only one verdict that does these things. There's one verdict that holds the defendant accountable for what he intended to do, for what he tried to do to Ariel. There's one verdict that's supported by the physical evidence, the digital evidence, the corroborated testimony of witnesses, and the defendant's own confession. There's only one verdict that's corroborated that makes sense with all of that. There's only one verdict that the evidence and justice demands. And that verdict is that you find the defendant guilty as charged of attempted murder in the second degree. Thank you.
All right, let me go to the defense. I'm interested now. Now I want to go back and watch the rest of it, dude.
Please. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I want to begin by thanking you all for your time and dedication to this case. Most people serve on juries, 2-3 days. You guys have been here for close to a month now, and I want to just express Heartfelt thanks for that. It was your time and doing that that made sure that Gerhard got a fair trial. That's what this was about, and we appreciate your time tremendously. You know, we're at the end of the trial here, but I want to actually circle back to the very beginning, jury selection, and remind you guys about that. Multiple days, started off with 200 something jurors, whittled it down, excuse after excuse. People couldn't be here, couldn't be fair, couldn't set aside what they heard, weren't willing to give him a fair shake. And we whittled it down to less and less and less, and we ended up with the 16 of you here. And it wasn't by accident. It wasn't by accident. It's because we saw in you what we were looking for. Jurors that would wait until you heard everything. Jurors that weren't going to convict somebody based off of media reports. Jurors that weren't going to just look at one side of things. Jurors who had logic, reason, and common sense. And most importantly, jurors who had integrity to follow the law on reasonable doubt.
Objection, move to strike. None of this is evidence. Sustained. Please continue. I'd like to move to strike the entire closing argument up to this point.
I was like, he really, yeah.
We went through that process. You guys promised us you would do certain things, and we knew that you would. Now, I'm going to walk you through the evidence and the law today, and it'll be clear that there's reasonable doubt all over this case, all over this case. Before I do, he wants to, unwilling, unfaithful, unwilling, untrue. We talked about that. He wants to say unbelievable. I'll add another unword. Undeterred. They're undeterred by the evidence. It doesn't matter what it shows. They're going to spin it in their favor. They came up with a theory, and they went to search for facts to support it. They didn't look at the evidence and say, what's the theory that points that out? They came up with a theory, and they tried to find any fact they could to fit it. They were undeterred. Undeterred by the DNA. The DNA shows, and I'm going to go through it. She's holding the rock. She's a trillion level DNA on the unstained side. Undeterred. Oh, must be because when she was blocking. Undeterred.
Hold on.
I have to call Inuma again to say that sometimes.
I gotta slow back down to normal because he talks really fast.
The computer accesses these files undeterred. Still shows that he's looking at this credit card statement from 2018 to show that.
Scott, you are an amazing mod. Just so I totally agree with Moni G. You are great. Thank you so much.
He has a financial motive that is cheaper to kill her than divorce her. Undeterred. Undeterred by the fact the eyewitness picks the wrong person out of the photo lineup. And still, she stared at him, looked into his cold, dark eyes, saw him very clearly. Picks out the wrong person. Undeterred. Undeterred by the bruise on his face. Or maybe it's dirt. Maybe it's dirt. Evidence should lead to theories. You don't come up with a theory and then search for evidence to spin it to fit your theory. That's what happened in this case. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go through just some of the law initially, and then we're going to come back, go through all the evidence, and then I'm going to come back on some other parts of the law. So I want to start off first by reminding you, as you know, you took an oath, right? You told us that you would give your word that you would follow the law. You'd follow the law, and we know that you will. I want to start, you can follow along in your instructions if you want. I'm just going to start on page 2. Page 2. I talked to you at the beginning about these 3 principles of justice and fairness that keep our system safe for all of us. Anytime the government waves its accusatory finger at anyone, these principles kick in, and it's a safeguard. It's a safeguard, and that's summarized on page 2. You must presume the defendant is innocent of the charge against him.
I do have to say, too, just so you know, Maylin, you are also a wonderful mod. Truly appreciate you as well, Superwoman. And he does talk very, very fast.
Presumption remains with the defendant throughout the trial of the case unless and until the prosecution proves the defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. The presumption of innocence is not a mere slogan. Not a mere slogan, but an essential part of the law that is binding upon you. It's binding on you. It places upon the prosecution the duty of proving every material element of the offense charge against the defendant beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, I'm a visual learner. I had this chart earlier to help you guys understand how that works. We talked about how the presumption of innocence, you don't start in the middle. You don't start in the middle. it requires that you start here. You start here. It requires that. And then there's a gap, and it's a proof gap. This has to be filled with proof beyond a reasonable doubt before you even step this way. Before you even step this way. If there's no proof beyond a reasonable doubt, you don't move. You don't move. And let's look what a reasonable doubt is. You must not find a defendant guilty upon mere suspicion or about evidence which only shows that the defendant is probably guilty. Probably guilty is not good enough under the law that you took an oath to uphold. What the law requires, ladies and gentlemen, what is required by law before the defendant can be found guilty is not suspicions, not probabilities, but proof. And think about that word. It's a strong word. We don't pay enough attention to that word. Proof. That's a powerful word. Proof of the defendant's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. That's the law. Probably not enough. That's the law. Again, visual learner, I have a chart to help you with this. This chart summarizes page 2 in a more simple way. State's burden, it's their burden.
Prepared
right?
for me. I'm a visual learner.
Make no mistake, this is not Errol Koenig versus Gerhard Koenig. This is the state of Hawaii versus Gerhard Koenig with their resources, the police force, their computer experts, their everybody. Their burden, state of Hawaii versus him. This is their burden. If they only provide, if obviously 100% you think is not guilty, not guilty. Probably not guilty, not guilty. Possibly not guilty, not guilty. Maybe not guilty, not guilty. Maybe guilty, not guilty. If you're like maybe, maybe not. If you're left thinking, I don't really know what exactly happened. Maybe, maybe not. If you're here, not guilty. Possibly guilty, probably guilty, not guilty. That's how high the burden is. It's a safeguard against convicting innocent people. This is what you took an oath to uphold. I'm going to circle back to this, but this is what you told us you would apply. Now, I'm going to go through more of the law later, but just very quickly, the law on attempted murder, the elements are on page 14. Page 14. Before we go through the evidence, page 14. Second paragraph. A person commits the offense of attempted murder in the second degree if he intentionally engages in conduct which, under the circumstances as he believes them to be, is a substantial step in the course of conduct intended or known to cause the death of another person. That his intentions was to kill her. That was his intentions all along. That's what they have to show. It goes down, paragraph 1, the elements. The defendant intentionally engaged in conduct. And 2, the conduct under the circumstances as the defendant believed them to be was a substantial step in the course of conduct intended or known to be practically certain by the defendant to cause the death of Errol Koenig. That's what they have to prove, more than maybe, more than possibly, more than probably. That his intention and his knowledge was practically certain he was going to kill her. That's their burden. That's what they have to prove. We'll come back to this. There is an instruction on self-defense. I'm going to talk about that at the end after we go through the evidence. They are the included offenses. I'll walk you through those as well. But let's now look at the evidence, and it'll be clear there is just massive amounts of reasonable doubt. So the first thing, one second here. This issue about, was this planned? Okay, was this planned? This big plan, he just went through this motive, that Gerhard Koenig, you got to know him, that he came up with this plan in late December, that it was going to be cheaper to kill her than divorce her. Was this planned? Let's look at the evidence. Is there a reasonable doubt about that? Let's walk you through that. First of all, she brought up the idea of going on a trip to Oahu. That was her idea. Why would that be the plan? If you're planning on killing somebody, you're an anesthesiologist, you have access to, as they fault him for being a doctor, I'm going to get into that a little later, having these things at home that he uses to save people's lives, that your plan is, let me not stay on Maui where there's probably 800,000 less people and more secluded areas. Let me sneak syringes through TSA onto an airplane, come to the busiest island there is in Hawaii, 1 million people, go to a place, a trail, a parking lot I've never been to, that I'm not familiar with, and in broad daylight, 4 minutes from a very busy parking lot, I want to try and kill her. That's the plan. That makes absolutely no sense. Logic, reason, common sense. Why would you do that? The life insurance issue. Well, this is the busy parking lot. So I apologize. You saw this in, this was the plan to come here. With all these cars, all these people, he says 99% don't hike or whatever. He didn't know that. He put in here, this is the plan, according to them, that he's going to come to this unknown place with all these people, all these cars, and try to kill his wife instead of just doing it on Maui. That's the plan, according to them. The life insurance issue. Now, this shows two things. I mean, we're going to get into later about how he told her about it that morning, and she learned that morning if something happened to him, she would get $1.5 million. But it's relevant in another way. If in December and January and February, you're planning to kill your wife, why are you going through the process of obtaining $1.5 million on your life for her? That's not the sign of somebody plotting to kill somebody. That's a sign of somebody trying to work on, okay, look, we got to figure this out for our kids. And if something happens, there's, he's not planning to kill her. Now, the birthday card, he writes this morning. It's the only time she got emotional because she knows it was genuine. And I'm going to talk about that more later. He writes this. There isn't an obstacle in this world too hard for me to fight through for you. I would take on anything just to see your smile. You're one of the kindest, most giving and selfless people I know. Selfless people I know. Putting others before yourself. So much love. You're the heart of our family. Fun, fearless, and a terrific mom. The kids and I hit the jackpot with you. He meant that. You don't write a letter like this because if you're planning to kill somebody 2 hours later. There was no plan. There was no plan.
Not really an argument. I'm
the
sorry.
reservation. He made a reservation to go to dinner that night.
My
He's
opinion.
not planning on.
Just my opinion. I did not watch this trial, but just my opinion is all of these things do make sense if you're trying to cover your tracks. So his argument that it doesn't make sense isn't really an argument. I just saw him on Jesus. Did he insure the family jewels? A good one.
Killing anybody. There was no plan. This is from that day. They're having a great trip. They had gone through some rough times, but they were making some progress, in part because they weren't really talking about it. And that's why she felt comfortable. I'm not saying she was trying to hook up with Miller again. She wanted to travel for work. And that's why she felt comfortable bringing it up. Hey, we've been making progress, but, I got to travel for work, And then she says, my mom can come with me. That's what Garrett told you about. So this is them on the trip the day before. This so-called big plan. There was no big plan. Now, why are they committed to saying that there was this pre-plan and financial motive? Well, because of course, it makes no sense anyone would have syringes on this hike unless this thing was pre-planned from earlier. So they have to stick to that, even though it makes absolutely no sense. There was no plan. And I got to tell you, I got to tell you, okay. When they get into the fact that in like December or whenever it was, there's a text message where she's like, are you coming home soon? And he's like, this lady just got hurt on a hike and a rock fell on her. So I'm trying to save her life. The fact that they're trying to say that at that time, the light bulb went on in his head and he was like, I got it. I can kill her on a hike with a rock.
Objection.
That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
And move to strike. Granted. That's why
Okay. Well, That's what he was pointing out. Okay.
Objection again to improper argument.
Sustained.
The idea that he came up with this plan because he was trying to save a patient's life who was hurt with a rock on a hike is ludicrous. So, ladies and gentlemen, as much as they want to avoid it, as much as they try to talk about witnesses and corroborations, the reality is this. What happened on the mountain before the hikers got there, it is essentially she said, he said. The witnesses told you. They didn't see much. One witness only saw one hit. The other didn't see a hit at all. One of them picks out the wrong person in the photo lineup. Okay. Everything before that, they told you they can't say what happened. They don't know how it started. It's she said, he said. Now, by the way, these witnesses who apparently stood there and stared at him for 30 seconds, looking into his deep, cold eyes, they didn't see no syringes on the ground. You know, the one she says she flicked out of his hand that landed right there. They're nurses. They didn't see that because it didn't happen. The point is, ladies and gentlemen, when it's your burden of proof, it's this high, and it is she said, he said. Your she said better not offend logic, reason, and common sense. Better not offend be contradicted by the physical evidence. Better not be highly motivated. Better not have examples of many times where she was deceptive to the police and to you. And all of those are present with her testimony. I'm going to walk you through that. Now, logic, reason, and common sense. The bottom line is Ariel Koenig is not reliable. She's not reliable. We talk about credibility. The question is reliability. Okay? Logic, reason, and common sense. We don't ask you to leave that at the door. We want you to bring that in here and look at what was said. Let's look at what she said, right? I mean, basically she's saying she wouldn't take the selfie, and then he was like, I'm tired of this shit. Let me throw you off the cliff. And then he tries to stab her with a syringe as he's loading it first, and then he bashes her up to 10 times. That's her story, okay? First of all, the way she describes it makes it sound like he had multiple arms, like an octopus. She says that she's covering, he's on top of her, covering her mouth, and then he has a syringe, and then he's loading he has a vial, and he's loading it, but he's holding her down.
The evidence.
Sustained.
Can we approach, Your Honor?
Sure, come on up.
Oh boy.
The inference is, why would you have a vial unless you're trying to load it? He has a syringe in his hand. The other hand, he's holding her mouth. He's down on top of her, doing all of this while she's supposedly kicking and fighting. He only has 2 arms. And in the middle of it, they're having a full conversation. Your mom's not going to be very happy if you do this. You know, the kids aren't going to be, you know, her story makes no sense. Now, logic, reason, and common sense as we look at her story, and it is a story, okay? If we look at her story, if this was a big plan that someone's going to bring a syringe to incapacitate somebody and stab them to make it easier to throw them off the cliff, don't you think they would load the syringe ahead of time? Don't you think they would load the syringe ahead of time? Their story is that he's that's the plan. And in the middle of it, he's like, oh, wait, I got to take out this vial and get it ready. That makes no sense, especially given the fact that it's undisputed. He had just gone up the mountain by himself for 10 minutes.
Hey, Yummy.
If he had it and wanted to use it, he could have loaded it. It makes no sense because it didn't happen. It didn't happen. The other thing, and I'm glad he brought up this thing about plan A, plan B, plan C. because it proves the point I was going to get to. Why in the world, if you bring a syringe to incapacitate someone to make it easier to throw them off the cliff, why would the syringe be plan B? It would be plan A. You would use the syringe first, and then you would throw them off. You wouldn't start the scuffle and make that, start the scuffle and they'd be like, oh, wait, now I'm going to stab her with the syringe. That makes no sense. It makes no sense that, that's the plan.
How many times did
he knows
say
if
that?
something like that happened, he's a doctor, a toxicology report would show propofol in her thing.
It makes
in her
no
blood,
sense. It
you know,
makes no
this is
sense.
Not an evidence.
It makes no sense that he would start the scuffle before using
Oh,
the
I said
syringe.
it
That was
again.
his big plan. Because it didn't happen. This idea that she could just flick the syringe out of his hand. He's holding it tight, according to her, just flicks it. None of that makes any sense. This idea about, well, he hid evidence. The rock is found right there. We don't know exactly where because HPD should have photographed it before they moved it.
Oh
But
my
why would he get
God.
rid of the syringes and leave the rock? None of that makes any sense.
Said it again.
And then, of course, we get into him leaving her on the mountain. Leaving her on the mountain. If this is a big plan to use this hike as an opportunity to throw her off and kill her, why would he walk away and leave her there alone thinking he's going back to the car? And they're trying to say, well, all kinds of things about that. But the reality is this. If you think, even though it's not true, if he went off on his own, because if she said, well, it's too high, I'm getting a little scared, and his plan was to kill her, he wouldn't leave her. He would say, okay, you know what, that's fine, but let's just at least go over here and take a selfie and then try to throw her off, right? He wouldn't have left her for that reason. If he was planning to try and throw her, he would have stayed with her. And then her rationale, it went, to get around the idea that undisputable that she clearly said when he got back, she told the detective that he said, oh, you're still here. He was surprised that she was still there. She says, well, he knew I meant I was going to go exploring in that area. Where was there to explore? We heard from witness after witness. It was you either go up or you go down. You don't go off and go exploring. That was her way to try and cover up. That it was clear he left her thinking she was going back to the car, which you wouldn't do if you had a plan to kill somebody by throwing him off the cliff.
It makes no sense.
TSA, we've all been through it. Sharp metal syringe objects, sharp objects, not going to work. Not going to work. Logic, reason, common sense that he has this intent to kill her, but then he lets her crawl away. He lets her go down to the witnesses. Doesn't come after. Doesn't make any sense.
I told you
demeanor.
it doesn't make any sense.
They say, oh, she was very matter of
Oh,
fact
my
and just
God.
told it. Ask yourself, if someone's describing what should have been the most horrific thing they've ever been through, bloody murder, someone's trying to stab you with a syringe, a monster's trying to throw you off a cliff. When you're recounting that, you might get a little emotional. Not at all. And she's not just someone who doesn't get emotional, because we saw her get emotional when we showed her the card. When she read the birthday card, she got emotional. I submit to you that was probably guilt, but whatever it was, she knew it was genuine, and she showed an ability to show emotion. That was real. The card was real. You cannot get emotional over a made-up story that didn't happen when you started the fight. Reasonable doubt, logic, reason, and common sense. Now, Ariel's story contradicts the physical evidence. It just does. And this is a huge problem for them. And they try to come up at the last minute with, well, maybe when blocking it, her DNA got on it. But let's talk about that. Because we're talking more than probably, right? He wants to say maybe blocking her DNA got on it. Maybe. Okay. But let's use our logic, reason, and common sense and look at the physical evidence. What does Scott Henderson say? The DNA guy. Generally, yeah, you could expect higher likelihood ratios with the more DNA that's present in a sample. The more DNA present in the sample, you can expect a higher ratio, yes? Generally speaking, yes. The more someone's DNA is on the sample, the higher
I
the
got
number.
something for the next
Higher
time
the
he
number.
says it.
He then goes on, we learn from him and Amarin, that, very important, the rock, swabbing from the unstained area. There was a stained area that looked like blood, and there was an unstained other side. They swabbed the blood, they tested, of course it's Ariel's blood. I told you that in opening statement, right? The blood side was Ariel. The unstained side, they don't test for blood. They test for human skin cell touch DNA from people holding objects, they told you, okay? The unstained side had a profile for 2 people, Ariel and Gerhard. Ariel's number was 1 trillion. His was 290. Let's go back to what Henderson said. The more DNA present on the sample, you can expect a higher ratio. Yes, yes. 1 trillion to 290. The rock was in her hand. The rock was in her hand. The DNA shows that. That blows away her whole story. That she didn't have the rock. The rock was in her hand. Her DNA is all over that. This idea, well, maybe when she was blocking it hit her, that's not going to lead to that much of her DNA on it, more than him.
Objection, speculation.
If he's holding the rock the whole time and she's just blocking, there's going to be more of his DNA than hers. She was holding the rock, and that blows away their entire theory. Scientifically, I asked Amarin, what about scientific evidence, Miss Amarin? And we talked about it. It's unmotivated. Scientific evidence is not trying to get full custody. His retirement. It doesn't lie. It is what it is. And they may say, well, maybe it was there because of this. Again, maybe, maybe not. A huge reasonable doubt. A huge reasonable doubt. She had the rock in her hand. 1 trillion to 290. Now, the other thing about the physical evidence is the injuries. They want to say, we heard about the stellate laceration. I'm going to talk more about it later. But it has one point and it spreads, right? And you heard, she at the end said she doesn't know how many times she was hit. The doctor, Grosjean, said 2, maybe 2. I cannot say how much more. Dr. Arden says 2 to 3. Okay. If she was hit 7, 8, 9 times with all his might, it would be way worse. Physical evidence doesn't support her version of events. Also, if she's under attack, she's going to be scratching, doing biting, as she says. He has no scratch marks, defensive wounds. There's no bite mark on him, even though she said she bit him. The physical evidence doesn't support her story. And that's a huge problem when it's this she said, he said, and this is your burden. That's a huge problem. Further problematic is the examples of deceptive behavior that we saw through her. Many examples of deceptive behavior that makes her unreliable. We heard about her deleting the text messages to hide it from her husband, to hide the extent of her relationship. That is inherently deceptive to do that. It showed that that's inherently deceptive. Now, the affair. Look, I'm not the morality police, okay? I'm not here saying she's an awful person because she had an affair. That's for you to decide, okay?
Objection,
The relevance.
improper.
Sustained.
And move to strike.
Granted, last argument on morality is stricken from the record.
The relevance of the affair is primarily that she lied about it to the detective. The context is showed in the relationship in January, February, and December, but the relevance is she lied about it to the detective. And that is incredibly important when it is she said, he said, and is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Let's look at this. This is, he said, well, she describes it to the detective as just some flirty text messages. He says, well, there's nothing in the text messages about sex. Well, she deleted most of them, so we don't really know what's in there. But we do know what we saw. On the trip, the day before he's going to confront her, this is at 11:22 p.m., presumably Hawaii time, or maybe it's California time, whatever, but it's late at night. She's sending this to Jeff Miller. Jeff Miller is sending her this. They have a nickname for Gerhard, Hail You, which is that radiology nuclear or whatever. They call I have hail you. They have a code word to let each other know when he's around. She's listening to an audiobook, How to Help My Spouse Heal from My Affair. That's what she's listening to. He says to her, you're engaged and continue an elaborate secret affair instead of coming to me asking to work on our relationship. And her response is, if anything, I learned how stupid it was this time and I know how to make sure it doesn't happen again. That's her response. Okay? Now, to the detective, no affair. Some flirty text messages. To you guys, no affair, just some flirty text messages. You saw 12/1, December 1st, all day long on a Sunday. Good morning, all day long, all day long, all day long, good night. And that's how she says it to the detective. She was misrepresenting, deceptive, and lying to the detective. Further examples of deceptive behavior is what she does with her primary care doctor and the records. After the fact, she tells her primary care doctor in an email to add, can you add traumatic brain injury? I want to make sure the documentation is consistent between my care at Queens back here in Mount. And that's the important part. Why is that important? Because, number one, she says she doesn't recall reviewing the Queens records. The Queens records doesn't mention traumatic brain injury. Arden told you that, the two don't you think if traumatic brain injury was in her Queens records, they would have asked Grosjean or Carlton Whitney that? It wasn't in there. So this shows she is not just asking the primary care doctor to do this, she's deceiving the primary care doctor into believing that the Queen's record said traumatic brain injury. So the PCP will be like, oh, okay, I'll add it. It's deceptive behavior. It's incredibly misleading. Now,
Look at his face. I don't
She
like
says-
the way he looks.
she
I know
says
it's-
she's surprised about the work bag.
can't judge
she's
him by
surprised
the
about the
looks,
work bag.
but he's creepy.
Oh, I
looking.
didn't know. You know, she knew he had it there. She knew there was syringes and vials in there. She calls her attorney, and then they turn it in and say, "Oh, surprise! Look what I found." She knew it was there. She knew it was there. She lied about that. She lied about her affair. She lied to her primary care doctor. You know, there is I really like quotes. So there's an author, famous author by the name of Samuel Clemens. Most of us know him better as Mark Twain. Mark Twain was giving a speech once to some young people about the dangers of being untruthful. And what he said was, you ought to be very careful about lying. Because once caught, you can never again be, in the eyes of the good and the pure, what you were before.
Objection to improper argument.
You guys come in here, you give people the benefit of the doubt. They come in here, you say, I'll hear them out. And then they lie about different things. They deceive. In the eyes of the good and pure of all of you, you can't look at her the same again. It's dangerous. It's dangerous. If she's going to manipulate her PCP doctor, if she's going to be deceptive to the detective, do you think for a second she would hesitate to be that way with you? And then we get into bias, interest, motive. We talked about this. How she knew a divorce was coming. She wanted full custody, how they're using these allegations against him to get full custody, to make it where he can't ever see his kids again, to get half his retirement, to get all of the house, things that she might not get. She knows that. She said to you that their statement is, we want full custody, but if depending on the outcome of the case, that can be revisited later. She knows the ramifications. Now, let's compare that to Mr. Gerhard, Dr. Gerhard Koenig. You got to see him. Trust your gut. Trust what you know about people. Is he somebody that is a monster that came up with this plan to stab his wife and throw her off a cliff? Is that the sense you got from him? Or was he a hurt human being struggling with infidelity but trying his best? You know, they talked about his parents, how they moved from South Africa when he was young. He worked really hard to become a doctor. He talks about, oh, she was trying to control everything about her, all of this awful controlling guy. What does she say? Prior to December, you generally describe your marriage as good, right? Yes, sir. This is what Ariel said. You don't describe your marriage as good if somebody is a controlling, coercive, violent person. There's a lot embedded in this. You don't describe it as a good marriage if unless they're a good dad. Look, domestic violence is horrible. There's some awful men out there that use their power, control, financial means to control women in improper ways. This is not him. That's not him. She wouldn't say it was a good marriage if he was like that. His version of events, they fault him for wanting to see her phone and things like that. The audiobook said that's what it takes. This is Ariel. I asked you earlier, you understood the audiobooks you're listening to by these professionals says to give up privacy, give up access, get them to trusting it. She says, yes, they're faulting him for the professional advice, what is said. He's not trying to deprive her of her career. He's trying to stop her from seeing the guy that she had an affair with. He was fine with her getting another job. That's a very human thing. Why would you be okay with her going back to work with the guy that she had an affair with? Now, he went into detective mode when he found out about the affair. That's a very human reaction. Very human. He was on the computer looking up Reddit and infidelity and getting some advice. It's not easy when your partner cheats on you. He's struggling with it. They're making some progress in January and February because counseling, she turns it not about the affair, but about other issues. But they're making progress. They're kind of heading in a good direction. They go on this hike. And it makes sense that at that hike, she brings up this issue. Again, not that I want to be with Miller, but hey, I got to travel for work. Okay, I got to travel for work. And this is a detail that you just can't make up, right? He says, then when they're fighting about it, she said, well, my mom can come with me to chaperone. He leaves her because they got into a fight, not because she's afraid of heights. She goes on all kinds of bungee jumping hikes all the time. He comes back and he's like, oh, you're still there. He described to you what happened.
Yeah, Moni, that's why I actually want to watch this trial now. So I'm probably going to do that because I can't. Normally you can tell by closing statements pretty much where you would go, but I can't. Even though this defense lawyer is annoying as all hell.
He's not saying, oh, he grabbed me and pulled me down. The scuffle started on this mountain trail and they ended up on the ground. Whether they tripped or fell, whatever, he ended up on her. And then he told you how she's grabbing his testicles. And she admits to it. And then I also squeezed his testicles. That's her testimony. It was all happening so fast. We spent a lot of time going through it all. That's not real life. In real life, you don't get hours to be like, okay, and then you did what? Well, why didn't you do this? Well, did you consider that? Did you consider doing this with the rock instead? It was happening in seconds, and he reacted, and he had a reflex, and that's human. That's human. That's human. He reacted. And then he felt horrible about it. And he told you about that. He never wanted to hurt her. Never. He felt terrible about it.
Thanks,
He
criminally
was shocked that he could even do that
you.
to her in that moment. He felt horrible. The physical evidence supports his story. The DNA, and I'm going to get into the medical evidence a little more in a second.
I'm assuming you watched the whole trial, Lacey. Since you're here, I just want to ask, what do you think? What would you vote, guilty or not guilty? I didn't watch this trial at all. I thought I'd get a gist of it, at least watching the closing statements, but now I'm just confused. The photos are very damning, but now I gotta watch it. It is a trip, Mooney G. Like, I gotta watch it now, seriously.
You have this, which apparently might have been dirt. Undeterred, might have been dirt. You have a cut, you have bruising, right where he said he was hit. Reasonable doubt. Now, the FaceTime with Emil that they call a confession. There's no assurances of reliability. He explained to you what happened in that call. We need to consider it in the context in which it took place and ask ourselves, is this a reliable, thing that happened that we can rely on? Two highly emotional participants in the phone call. One is suicidal. One is thinking his life is over. He's very emotional, calling his son to say goodbye. The other, obviously, not blaming Emil at all, incredibly emotional. His grandma says she was shaking, crying. Two very, very emotional people. Then you look at the environmental factors. He's on the side of a cliff. And they made it a point to get the HPD officer to say, it's very windy over there, notoriously windy. Very, very windy day, according to the police. He's on speakerphone on the side of a cliff talking. And he told you what he did. He was explaining to her, look, she was having this affair. She got hurt. This is her blood. She crawled away or got away. She crawled away. And she said, I tried to kill her. He was telling her that's why he was going to end his life. He wasn't confessing. He was telling her, that's why I'm going to end his life. Now, we know this is his testimony. So as you sit here today, there's parts of the exact wording and timing of what was said that you don't quite remember exactly verbatim, word for word, correct? He said, yes. He cannot tell us exactly word for word what was said. And then we have an example of him making assumptions. He first tells the detective, my dad said he tried to push her off the cliff. That's what he assumed. Not blaming him, that's what he assumed. But later on in the conversation, in the interview, the detective asked you about that, and he clarified, he said, the part about her pushing her off the cliff was what you assumed he meant, not what he actually said, correct? He said, oh, yes, correct. So we have an example already of him saying something that he assumed that wasn't accurate. He wants to say, it was so clear at the end of his redirect, he said, without a doubt, I know what was said. Do you recall how he had to try 4 times? The first 3? Emil said, yeah, I was confused. I'm kind of confused. And he asked again, yeah, I'm kind of confused.
Lacey, I think I'm going to do a little research on this trial, but I'd love to get your take on it. Maybe I stream every day right now. I stream every day during the day, doing a rewatch now of trial 2 of the Karen Reed. I just finished trial 1 because I have not seen it. If you are free tomorrow, Lacey, I would love for you to join me. We could go over this case together because I'd love to learn your point of view on it. Even I know a couple people that watch me now are interested. So I'm only because I can't stream for much longer. I'm going to end pretty much after he's done with his closing statement here tonight. But if tomorrow doesn't work, I'd love to have you on sometime, anytime. But now that I'm really interested in this trial, just from watching the closing statements, I'd love to go over it with you. Oops. Can you email me, Lacey, so I can send you a link for a stream?
I'm kind of confused. And finally, Emil understood what the prosecutor wanted him to say and agreed. I'm not faulting Emil at all. Okay. This was a misunderstanding. The second call shows that. Gerhard calls the second time and he wasn't saying, why'd you rat me out? He was saying, wait, what? You told Ariel's parents I tried to kill her? Oh, like, I gotta go. And he was gonna kill himself again. This idea that he wasn't giving Ariel to blow by blow Emil to blow by blow what happened. He was trying to say goodbye to his son. This is not a confession they're making it out to be. I just point out to you, it's not his fault. He's lived with Ariel the last year.
Lacey, I am. Oops,
He wants to be on Maui.
Let's stay paused.
He likes it here. He knows the only way he can stay.
I am engrossed in the Karen Reed because when I started my channel, I wanted to do the psychological aspects in true crime, specifically in the anti-Karen Reed movement and group thinking and things. My degree is in psychology. So that began with me saying I can't really evaluate that without seeing where it all began with Karen Reed, which led me to stream the first trial instead of watching it on my own. So I'd love to have you for sure. I normally go on live daily at 1 o'clock, around 1 o'clock. So if tomorrow at 1 o'clock works for you, send me an email and I will shoot you a link for tomorrow around 1 o'clock. If that works for you, I would love that. Moni G says, I hope you two can get together. That would be great. So Moni G, you watched Lacey before. I'm sorry, Lacey. I just found your channel thanks to Scott. I even said, great. I subscribed right away and I'm looking forward to watching your videos. My email is in my description, but I'm going to type it in the chat too to make it easier for you. Thank you so much, by the way.
Here is living with her. We talked about her and her actions with the detective and the primary care doctor. He understood what the prosecutor wanted him to say.
Eastern Standard
after
Time.
The fourth try.
Oh, perfect.
This was not a confession. Gerhard's actions after the incident, they want to say it's consciousness of guilt. I say it's conscious. It's proof he's human. He went into deep despair. He couldn't believe that he could cause that kind of harm to the person that he loved. And that can coexist with defending himself in the moment, in that reaction. He felt horrible about it. He went into And then, shockingly, the prosecutor asks him, well, you played D1 football, right, officer? I mean, the fastest man in the world, Usain Bolt,
Sorry,
Olympic
guys.
sprinter.
My internet went nutso. So I don't know what the fuck happened. Excuse me. Sorry, Lacey. The F word flies out of my mouth. So I normally warn new people. I have a tendency to swear. So I apologize. Sorry about that.
From Jamaica could not get to him from the car if he's trying to get into the bushes. Look, I get it. Officer safety. Look, I'm not faulting them. They came in hot. They're the strategic enforcement detail. Apparently, you got to be 300 pounds to be in it. I get it. They think he has a syringe. Okay. They come in hot. They couple strikes. Don't hit him in the face and arrest him. I'm not faulting them for that. I don't know about this, saying he was trying to flee. Okay, that's not cool. Okay. But I get it. Officer safety. He has an injury. Look at this. It's dry blood and it's bruising. It's the kind of purple bruising that takes place hours later. When you first get an injury, it doesn't bruise. This happened earlier. Dry blood, purple bruising. That takes time to get to that point. A theory and search of facts. I talked to you guys about this. To try and use a computer to manufacture financial motive without telling us last week that sometimes, I'm sorry, how much time is that? Thank you. That sometimes the computer opens files and shows it was accessed. Don't you think that would have been fair to tell you guys that? Instead of leading you to believe that 100% Gerhard looked at all of these things? Look, make no mistake, he said 80% of it he looked at. He's not hiding that. He's just, when he's up here saying, like, I don't remember at 3 a.m. looking at a 2018 Amex credit card statement that was in my old divorce file. And, but undeterred. It shows he had a financial motive. He was looking up how much his divorce costed him in the past.
Costed him?
What?
Costed it.
He makes a lot of money as a
Costed
doctor.
it.
The search terms: kill, push, shove, syringe. They're looking for the smoking gun. They have had it with his computer. Looking for the smoking gun. What do they find? No smoking gun. Just some search about hikes that you would search if you were truly just going on a hike. Again, maybe, maybe not. They were looking for a smoking gun. They don't find it. So what do they do?
It's awfully
They
high.
manufacture a motive, undeterred, theory and search of facts. Oh, no smoking gun. But you know what? It shows he's looking at financial documents. He has a financial motive. It's not fair. I submit to you that whatever they found on that computer, they would find some way to spin it. Whatever they found, they would find some way to spin it. That's not fair. The work bag. And this, I gotta say, he uses these tools and materials to save lives. And they want to fault him for having it? He's a doctor. He talked to you about why he has it on Maui, not on Oahu. He uses these things to save lives, not try and somehow poison his wife. And she knew he would take it from work every day. Now, self-defense, first thing you got to decide is whether or not this was deadly force that he used. We know it wasn't. We're going to get into that in a second. But it doesn't matter either way because it's the same rock that she hit him with. So even if it was, even if you say it was deadly force, it was the force that was used against him. So it doesn't matter. It's the same rock. The only thing it does say about it and this is the part that was incomplete about the duty to retreat. It says, the use of deadly force is not justifiable if the defendant knows he can avoid the necessity of using such force with complete safety by retreating. You only have to retreat if you can do so safely. She's holding on to his testicles, hitting him. And it just talks about being reasonable. He used the same force that she used against him. And they want to say, well, look at the difference. How could it be the same rock? Obviously, if one gets hit cleaner than the other, the same rock can do that. You know, like I could throw something at a baseball at someone's head, and one it hits them in the face and one it hits them in the arm. It's going to cause obviously it can be depending on how the direction, how hard the landing was. He stopped. He didn't keep going. What amount of force was used? We know, like I said earlier, we know what Ariel says. She doesn't know. I don't know the exact number. They are downplaying what she said because they know it doesn't make sense. They're saying, oh, up to 10 times. So what does that mean? 6, 7, 8, 9? Doesn't mean 2. But now they know that doesn't make sense. She was hit 8, 9 times. And maybe she meant less. She doesn't know. Grosjean says possibly 2, maybe more. I cannot tell you. Arden says 2 to 3. He says 2. Grosjean talks about, there's rock in there or dirt. He's not a forensic pathologist. He didn't test the material just to show like what it was. You know, her condition after. You saw her walking. She's walking on the hill. Okay. But more importantly, this is her talking after. And I'm going to ask you to do something with me now. If you could help me out here. Either close your eyes or don't look at the screen and just listen to her voice.
Where does he work?
He works for TMG at Maui Memorial Medical Center. TMG is called it.
At Maui Memorial.
Yeah. So TMG's a group of anesthesiologists.
Did you guys drive here today?
Yeah.
Which is your car?
It's a Nissan Rogue.
Do you remember the license plate? If not, that's okay.
It's not our car, but I'm on there.
What color is it? The Nissan.
It's like black or it's gray. It's gray. Someone just wet my mouth. I wet paper towel. My mouth feels really gross.
I agree, Mama.
Sorry, I know. No, you're an angel. I'm trying to stop the bleeding until they get there. I know, I really.
What was your husband wearing today?
Wearing like a light gray shirt and
Okay. Does she sound like she has a traumatic brain injury too? She sounds okay. Look, I'm not saying it wasn't a bad cut. And look, I'm not, nobody wanted her to have that cut. I'm not saying it's not, I'm just saying
That was more than
the level
cut.
of force he used, you can see. It was, he talks about chunks missing from his scalp. No doctor said that. It was soft tissue. You heard from Dr. Arden, a very credible man, that apparently for 14 grand is going to sacrifice his integrity. Obviously, he's not going to do that. He told you the blood is not a good indication of the severity. The blood is not a good indication of severity. No skull fractures, no soft tissue. The tip of her thumb, he said it was just the very tip. And sure, after the first hit, he puts her thumb, it hits it, just the tip is fractured. We heard about that. All 3 doctors agree. No substantial risk of death and no serious bodily under the law. All 3 said that. We talked about the stellate laceration. The Glasgow coma score was 15 out of 15. Triage, they waited a few hours outside because she wasn't in that serious of a condition. She had a bad laceration. They sewed it up. She went home the next day. And I don't mean to.
He had a Glasgow score of 15.
He feels terrible that happened. But he wasn't trying to kill her. That's about the amount of force that was used.
If you don't know what a Glasgow score is, it's when they evaluate how like coherent or conscious you are especially when you have a head injury. So if you get down to like I don't know what the number is that normally basically means you're almost unconscious. But the lower you get, the more unconscious and lethargic and out of it you are. So if you are 15 out of 15, you're perfectly lucid. Yeah, I don't know. This is why I'm very interested. I wish I would have watched this trial now. Can't wait for me and Lacey to talk about this. Yeah, I'm very excited. I'm going to have to binge watch some of this so I at least know what I'm talking about. Wow, I'm super excited.
Now, her eye. Let's look at this photo. The orbital is the most fragile area there is. And he said, very fragile bone. If he hit her with that rock, it would have broke bones. There was a scuffle. They landed on the ground. They're fighting. There's elbows. He's going for the rock. They're fighting for it. There's no doubt her eye got hurt in this thing. But he didn't smash her eye with the rock the way they want you to believe. And then you have his injuries. We talked about that. Now, it's the state's burden to prove to you this was in self-defense. More than probably. That it wasn't under the circumstances, that he reacted as a human when she was doing these things to him and hit him. They have to prove to you it doesn't apply. It was a reflex. It was a reaction. It was a human reflex and reaction to defend himself in the moment. And that can coexist with him feeling terrible about it after. This happened extremely fast, and then he stopped. Now, we talked about the elements of attempted murder. He had no intent to kill her. You see on the bottom, and self-defense applies. They have to disprove those two, self-defense. Then there's something that takes you down to the others, right? The other offenses. If and only if you find the defendant not guilty of attempted murder, then or unable to reach a verdict, unanimous verdict, then you must consider these other included offenses. None of them apply. Self-defense is a defense to all of them. If you think that they didn't disprove self-defense, it goes all the way down. But you work your way down through these things. I'm just going to go through it quickly because I don't have a lot of time. The next one is attempted assault in the first degree. That he took a substantial step in conduct intended to culminate in the commission of assault in the first degree. That he intentionally or knowingly was trying to cause serious bodily injury. Let's look at the definition of serious bodily injury. Serious bodily injury means bodily injury which creates a substantial risk of death or which causes serious permanent disfigurement or protracted loss or impairment of the function of any bodily member or organ. The doctors say she didn't have that. He wasn't trying to do that. This doesn't apply. Self-defense, no intent to cause serious bodily injury. You go on to assault to the second degree. Again, serious, no intent to cause serious bodily injury. Self-defense applies to all of this. So you work your way through, self-defense applies to all of it. Her motive to try and get custody and conviction of any of these things helps her with that. Assault in the third degree.
Or improper instruction of the law.
So, should be substantial. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the instructions of the law. That's the instruction of the law.
Then you get to assault in the third degree, bodily injury, or negligent use of a dangerous instrument. Again, self-defense. He wasn't negligent. He was reacting. Reasonable doubt as to every one of these included offenses. So you just work your way down. And then there's something after that called a mutual affray. If this was a mutual affray. Reasonable doubt as to all of these. Now, I'm almost at the end here. I have couple more minutes. I want to end by saying a few things. This is the law. I ask you to use this as a guide to your deliberations. It's not about trying to figure out what happened. Your only goal is to answer the question, is there a reasonable doubt? Did they prove beyond a reasonable doubt this was not self-defense? More than possibly, more than probably. Let that guide your deliberations. It's a way to simplify things. After you talk about any piece of evidence, come back and remind each other, yeah, but does that prove this beyond a reasonable doubt? Let that guide your deliberations. I couldn't help but think last night. When they moved here, the United States, there's these constitutional rights that we all have. They didn't know it at the time, but it was for a moment just like this. When a jury of his peers would come together and follow the law and follow through on the oath that he took. I want to end with a quote. There was a politician back in the day who was giving a speech, and it was to other politicians, but I think it applies pretty well to jury service. It says, "For those to whom much is given, much is required. And when at some future date, the High Court of History sits in judgment on each of us, recording whether in our brief span of service, we fulfilled our responsibilities to the state, our success or failure will be judged by the answer to 4 questions. First, were we truly men and women of courage? Second, were we truly men and women of judgment? Third, were we truly men and women of integrity? And finally, were we truly men and women of dedication?" I ask you to keep those 4 things in mind as you deliberate. Courage to follow the law and do what's right, even if it may not be popular. Judgment to see through some of this ideas that he had a financial motive, that it was cheaper to kill her. Common sense judgment. Dedication to these principles and our Constitution. Dedication to it. Uncompromised dedication to the presumption of innocence and reasonable doubt. Deliberate that way. Uphold your oath.
Why is that working?
Follow the law. Let this guide you. Enforce the reasonable doubt standard. Follow the law. Do these things.
We heard you the first time.
And integrity will. Thank you for your time in the last month. On behalf of Dr. Koning and Manta Dirks, thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. I just have you.
Wow, that was brutal.
Appreciate it.
I have to say that was completely brutal. Closing statement. But I'm definitely excited to learn a little more about this trial and have a collab, whatever you want to call it, with Lacey tomorrow. It's going to be so much fun. So, hope that you will join me tomorrow at 1 o'clock. We will be talking about this trial with Lacey, and then after that, continue our trial 2 of Karen Reed with Jen McCabe. Her testimony is next up. So thank you guys for being here. Big effective. Yeah, I'm gonna probably be binging some of that tonight while I try and, well, in the morning when I try to sleep. So, yeah, thank you guys. Thank you, Moni G, for being here. And Yummy and our reader was here earlier. And Scott, thank you, Scott and Maylin, my mods. You guys are wonderful people. I love you so, so much. Everyone, yeah. Jem McCabe is always a fun one. We made a funny meme of her on the first trial, so we're definitely going to have to make another one this trial. But anyways, thank you so much for being here, Moni G, and everyone else. You guys have a wonderful night. I love you, and I will see you tomorrow. Good night.